The bioluminescent pavilions of Harmonia spires stretched toward the crystal sky like giant musical notes, frozen in mid-vibration. Jax Calder watched the Salen architecture with a mixture of awe and apprehension as he helped unpack the last of the supply crates. The human diplomatic quarter, a messy collection of temporary shelters and prefab units, looked embarrassingly primitive next to the living crystal structures that seemed to grow organically from the ground. Everything in the Salen Empire was alive in some way: buildings, transportation. Even their data storage systems all pulsed with a symphony of frequencies that only the Salen could fully perceive. Jax hefted a crate of communication equipment and winced as his back protested. At 43, he was too old to be doing logistics work. But that's what happened when you fell from grace in Earth's intelligence community. From decorated intelligence officer to glorified baggage handler for the Interstellar Harmony Conference, his career trajectory was not one he'd put on a recruitment poster. "Careful with that," Ambassador Vega called out as she swept past in her formal attire. "Those are calibrated resonance filters. We can't afford to look incompetent in front of the Salen." "No, we certainly can't have that," Jax muttered under his breath, setting the crate down with exaggerated gentleness. The irony wasn't lost on him. Earth's most advanced technology was considered quaint by Salen standards. Humanity was the junior partner in this alliance, tolerated mostly for their creativity and adaptability rather than their technological prowess. Jax felt the familiar tingle at the base of his skull, the harmonic frequencies of Harmonia spires affecting his neural pathways. He had always been sensitive to sound, but here in the Salen capital, it was like living inside a giant musical instrument. Every building, every vehicle, every piece of technology emitted frequencies that interacted in complex patterns. To most humans, it was barely perceptible, perhaps a slight pressure in the ears, or an occasional bout of dizziness, but Jax could feel each distinct note, each resonance pattern. It was his curse and his gift: harmonic empathy. The military had called it. The ability to sense, interpret, and sometimes even manipulate harmonic frequencies at a biological level. A gift that had made him valuable, then dangerous, then disposable. As the twin suns began to set, casting prismatic reflections through the crystal spires, Jax finished his duties and made his way to the accommodation area. The diplomatic staff had been assigned lavish guest quarters within one of the smaller resonance chambers, complete with bioluminescent lighting that pulsed in supposedly soothing patterns. Jax found the light overwhelming, too bright, too rhythmic, too alive. Instead, he dragged his sleeping bag to one of the empty equipment tents at the edge of the camp. It was sparse, dark, and blessedly quiet. He lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling of the tent. Tomorrow, the conference would begin in earnest. Representatives from 17 different species would gather to negotiate terms of galactic trade, territory rights, and mutual defense. The humans were pushing for better technology, transfer agreements, access to more of the Salen harmonic engineering that had revolutionized interstellar travel. The Salen, meanwhile, wanted expanded mining rights in the Proxima system and human assistance with their ongoing border disputes with the Corlin Federacy. Jax had no illusions about his role: stay invisible, handle the logistics, and above all, don't cause any diplomatic incidents. His harmonic empathy was a closely guarded secret now. The last time his abilities had been utilized, people had died. A lot of people. And Admiral Harrow had made sure Jax took the fall for it. The thought of Harrow made his stomach clench. The Admiral had masterfully orchestrated Jax's downfall, buried the evidence of his own involvement, and emerged as a hero. Now, Harrow was one of Earth's most celebrated military leaders, while Jax was lucky to have any position at all. Eventually, exhaustion overcame his churning thoughts, and he fell into a fitful sleep. Jax awoke to a strange sensation on his chest a vibration that seemed to penetrate directly to his bones. He opened his eyes to see nothing. The tent was still dark, but the weight on his chest was undeniable, as was the low, rhythmic thrumming that emanated from it. His hand moved instinctively to investigate and encountered something smooth, warm, and definitely alive. In one fluid motion, he rolled sideways, dumping whatever it was onto the floor of the tent, while simultaneously reaching for the small light unit by his makeshift bed. As illumination flooded the space, Jax found himself face to face with Queen Nixara of the Salen Empire. She was as magnificent as her official portrait suggested, tall and slender, with iridescent skin that shifted between azure and violet. Her eyes were large and faceted like cut gemstones, and the crest that crowned her head pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that Jax instinctively recognized as expressions of surprise and indignation. "Your Majesty," he stammered, scrambling to his feet and attempting a bow that probably looked more like a spasm. What? How did you—" The Queen of the Salen Empire rose gracefully to her full height, nearly 8 feet tall, and regarded him with what might have been amusement. When she spoke, her voice was melodic, each word carrying harmonic undertones that made Jax's skin tingle. "You emit a most unusual resonance pattern," she said. "It drew me here during my morning meditation walk. I found it soothing." Jax's mind raced. Why would the Salen monarch be wandering around the human camp at dawn? Why would she enter his tent? And most importantly, why had she been lying on his chest, producing that strange purring vibration? "I apologize for startling you," she continued. "Among my people, resonance healing is a common practice. When we encounter beneficial frequencies, we instinctively seek to harmonize with them. I was purring, as you might call it. It is how we process neural overload and restore balance." Before Jax could formulate any kind of coherent response, the tent flap burst open, and Captain Errol of the Royal Guard stormed in, followed by several other Salen warriors. Their crests flared with alarming patterns of red and orange harmonic signatures of aggression and protectiveness that Jax could feel as much as see. Simultaneously, from outside the tent came shouts of alarm as the human diplomatic security team responded to the sudden influx of armed Salen in their camp. "Your Majesty," Captain Errol exclaimed, his hand hovering over what Jax recognized as a sonic disruptor. "You disappeared from your chambers. We feared—" His faceted eyes fell on Jax, and his crest darkened ominously. "What is the meaning of this? This human has compromised your safety." "Stand down, Captain," Queen Nixara commanded, her harmonics carrying unmistakable authority. "I came here of my own accord. This human has done nothing wrong." Ambassador Vega pushed her way through the gathering crowd, her face cycling rapidly through expressions of confusion, horror, and diplomatic panic as she took in the scene. "Your Majesty," she managed, executing a formal bow. "We are deeply honored by your unexpected presence. If there's anything we can do to make your visit more comfortable—" "There is no need for concern," Queen Nixara interrupted smoothly. "I was simply exploring your camp. Your accommodations are fascinating in their simplicity." Jax could feel the vibration of tension in the air, not just emotional tension, but actual harmonic dissonance as the Salen guards and human security eyed each other warily. He needed to defuse this situation quickly. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing deeply, "I apologize for my inadequate welcome. Had I known you were interested in our humble facilities, I would have prepared a proper tour." The Queen's crest flickered with patterns that Jax interpreted as mild amusement. "No apology necessary. Sometimes the most interesting discoveries are the unplanned ones." She turned to leave, then paused, looking back at him with unreadable, faceted eyes. "What is your designation, human—" "Jax Calder, Your Majesty, Logistics Coordinator for the Earth Delegation." "Jax Calder," she repeated, the harmonic layers of her voice somehow caressing his name. Our meeting has been illuminating. As she glided out of the tent, followed by her still suspicious guards, Jax felt Ambassador Vega's hand clamp onto his arm with surprising strength. "What did you do?" she hissed. "Nothing," Jax protested. "I woke up and she was there. She said something about my resonance pattern being soothing." Vega's expression shifted from anger to calculation. "Resonance pattern. Are you manifesting harmonic abilities again? Because if you're hiding something that could jeopardize this conference—" "No," Jax lied reflexively. "I have no idea what she meant. Maybe Salen royalty just likes to wander into random tents. How should I know?" Before Vega could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts of alarm gave way to screams, and beneath it all, Jax felt a sickening pulse of subsonic frequencies that made his bones vibrate painfully. He knew that sensation, a harmonic weapon. The tent walls seemed to ripple as the destructive sound waves passed through them. Jax burst outside to see chaos unfolding in the central plaza. Queen Nyxara had collapsed to her knees, surrounded by her guards who were also struggling to remain upright. The harmonic attack was targeted precisely at Salen neural frequencies. Without thinking, Jax rushed forward, pushing through the confused crowd. He could feel the malicious harmonics more clearly than anyone else present, a pulsing, discordant wave designed to disrupt the natural resonance of Salen neural pathways. And beneath it, almost hidden, was a signature pattern that he recognized instantly. A pattern he'd encountered years ago, in a classified operation that had ended in disaster. "Harrow!" Jax reached the Queen's side just as another wave of subsonic assault hit. Acting purely on instinct, he closed his eyes and focused on the harmonic frequencies surrounding them. He could feel them, the natural resonance of harmonious spires, the disruptive attack waves, and beneath it all, the unique frequency pattern of the Queen herself, now faltering under assault. Drawing on abilities he'd sworn never to use again, Jax reached out with his mind and began to adjust the surrounding harmonic field. He couldn't stop the attack, but he could create a buffer, a counter-harmony that would dampen the worst effects. It was like conducting an invisible orchestra, pulling and pushing at sound waves that most people couldn't even perceive. The effort made his head pound and his nose bleed. But gradually, he felt the Queen's resonance stabilize. Her breathing eased, and her crest began to glow with more normal patterns. When he opened his eyes, he found himself the center of attention. Hundreds of witnesses, human and Salen alike, staring at him in shock. Captain Arel's expression was particularly difficult to read, somewhere between suspicion and reluctant gratitude. Queen Nyxara rose gracefully to her feet, her faceted eyes fixed on Jax with an intensity that made him want to disappear into the ground. "It seems," she said, her voice carrying easily across the now silent plaza, "that I have found my temporary harmony advisor." The words sent ripples of shock through the Salen delegation. Several of the more elaborately dressed officials, nobility, Jax assumed, began protesting immediately, their crests flashing with patterns of outrage and alarm. "Your Majesty!" One of them stepped forward, his harmonics vibrating with barely contained anger. "This is unprecedented. A human cannot possibly serve as a harmony advisor. The position requires years of training in the sacred resonance arts, not to mention proper lineage, and circumstances require adaptation." "Counselor Thalek," the Queen interrupted firmly, "we have just witnessed an assassination attempt using harmonic weapons, and this human has demonstrated unusual ability in countering such attacks." Ambassador Vega, who had been watching the exchange with growing alarm, finally found her voice. "Your Majesty, while we're honored by your interest in Mr. Calder, he is a vital member of our diplomatic team, and—" "I am not requesting—" "Ambassador," Queen Nixara said, the harmonics of her voice taking on an edge that made everyone within earshot flinch slightly. I am informing. Jax Calder will serve as my temporary harmony advisor for the duration of the conference. His unique abilities may be crucial to preventing further incidents. Jax opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again as realization dawned. The frequency signature in the attack, Harrow's signature, meant this was far more complicated than a simple assassination attempt. If Harrow was involved, there was a deeper game being played. And perhaps, just perhaps, this was Jax's chance to finally expose the truth. I would be honored to serve, Your Majesty, he said, ignoring Vega's look of betrayal. Though I should warn you, my formal diplomatic training is somewhat limited. The Queen's crest flickered with what Jax was beginning to recognize as her version of a smile. Diplomacy can be taught, Jax Calder. Survival instinct and quick thinking are much harder to instill. She turned to her guards. Captain Aurel, please escort my new advisor to the palace. He will need quarters appropriate to his position. As Jax followed the still suspicious captain toward the magnificent crystal structures of the Salen royal complex, he felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. In a single morning, he had gone from anonymous logistics coordinator to the center of an interstellar diplomatic incident. And somewhere in the background of his mind, the distinctive harmonic signature of Harrow's attack continued to resonate, a reminder of old wounds and unfinished business. Whoever had launched the attack had wanted the Queen dead and hadn't cared about the diplomatic fallout. But they had failed, and in the process, had given Jax unprecedented access to the heart of Salen power. If Harrow was involved in a plot against the Salen monarchy, Jax was now perfectly positioned to uncover it. And perhaps, finally, to bring the Admiral to justice for his past crimes as well. As they approached the living Crystal Palace, Jax felt the harmonic resonance of the structure wash over him like a wave, beautiful, complex, and slightly overwhelming. Captain Aurel noticed his reaction and gave him a measuring look. The crystal harmony may be intense for humans, the captain said, not quite managing to keep the condescension from his voice. If you find yourself unable to tolerate it, we can arrange for dampening fields in your quarters. That won't be necessary, Jax replied, straightening his posture. I find the harmonics quite fascinating. Actually, Errol's crest flickered with skepticism. Indeed. Well, temporary advisor. Allow me to be clear, your position may have been granted by royal decree, but that does not mean you have earned my trust. The Queen's safety is my sole priority, and if I detect any threat to her from any source, I will respond accordingly. Understood, Captain, Jax said evenly. We share the same goal, even if we approach it differently. Do we? Errol's faceted eyes studied him intently. I wonder what a disgraced human intelligence officer truly wants from this arrangement. Jax felt a cold shock run through him. You've researched me. Basic security protocol. Aurel replied with a dismissive gesture. Your record makes for interesting reading. Advisor Calder. Distinguished service, rapid advancement. Then a sudden fall from grace, following a classified operation that resulted in significant casualties. Details conveniently sealed. They had reached an ornate doorway that seemed to pulse with subtle light. Errol paused before it, turning to face Jax directly. The Queen may see something valuable in you, but I see a human with a shadowed past and unexplained abilities that no human should possess. Tread carefully. With that warning delivered, he pressed his palm to the crystalline surface, which rippled and then dissolved, revealing a spacious chamber beyond. Your quarters. The Queen will summon you when she is ready. I suggest you use the time to acclimate. With a curt nod, Errol departed, leaving Jax alone in the alien splendor of his new accommodations. The room was unlike any he had seen before. walls of living crystal that seemed to breathe and pulse with soft light, furniture that appeared to have grown organically from the floor, and a ceiling that displayed a real-time view of the spectacular Ceylon sky. But what struck him most was the subtle harmonics. The entire space resonated with a frequency that felt oddly calming, almost as though the room itself was trying to put him at ease. Jax sank onto what appeared to be a seating platform and ran his hands through his hair. In the space of a few hours, he had gone from anonymous logistics worker to advisor to the Ceylon Queen, all because he couldn't keep his abilities hidden when it mattered. And now, Captain Aurel knew about his past, or at least the official version of it. What Aurel couldn't know, what no one knew, was that the classified operation that had ended Jax's career had been a setup from the beginning. Admiral Harrow had used Jax's harmonic abilities to track a group of supposed terrorists, only for Jax to discover too late that they were actually political refugees. By the time he realized the truth, Harrow's forces had already launched their attack, hundreds dead, and Jax labeled as the intel officer who had made the catastrophic mistake. The evidence that would have cleared him proof of Harrow's deliberate deception had mysteriously disappeared from the record, and Jax, devastated by his unwitting role in the massacre, had lacked the will to fight the charges. He had accepted his demotion and disgrace, retreating into anonymity. Until now. Until he felt Harrow's distinctive harmonic signature in the attack on Queen Nixara. Jax closed his eyes and focused on the memory of that signature, a specific pattern of subsonic frequencies that was as distinctive as a fingerprint. He had felt it clearly during the attack. Harrow was involved somehow, which meant this assassination attempt was likely just one piece of a larger scheme. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, and the crystalline door rippled again. Queen Nixara entered, without guards this time, her tall form seeming to bring the light in the room to a higher intensity. Jax stood hastily and bowed. "Your Majesty, I wasn't expecting you so soon. I find that in matters of security, promptness is preferable to protocol," she replied, her harmonic voice creating pleasant resonances within the chamber. "Please, be seated. We have much to discuss, and little time before the formal proceedings of the conference begin." As they sat across from each other, Jax was struck by how different she looked in this private setting. Her regal bearing remained, but there was something more accessible in her manner, a directness that hadn't been present in the public plaza. "You recognize the harmonic signature of the attack," she stated. Not a question, but a certainty. Jax hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. And you possess abilities that no human should have, according to our understanding of your species." Again, he nodded. "My sensitivity to harmonic frequencies is unusual. It's something I've had since childhood, but it was enhanced through military training programs." "Enhanced," she repeated, her crest flickering with patterns that suggested skepticism. "That explanation, while technically accurate, omits a great deal. Does it not?" Jax met her gaze steadily. "With respect, Your Majesty, everyone has parts of their past they prefer not to revisit." To his surprise, she made a sound that he recognized as laughter, a melodic cascade of harmonies that seemed to lighten the air in the room. "Well said, Advisor Calder. We will respect each other's private histories. Then." She leaned forward slightly. "But the present threat cannot be private. I need to know what you know about the attack." Jax weighed his options carefully. If he revealed too much about Harrow, he risked being dismissed as someone with a personal vendetta. If he revealed too little, he might miss his chance to stop whatever the Admiral was planning. "The harmonic weapon used against you carried the signature of an Earth military officer, Admiral Marcus Harrow. He's someone I've encountered before." Jax kept his tone neutral, professional. "If he's involved, this wasn't a random attack or the work of a fringe group. Harrow operates with official backing and substantial resources." You speak of him with careful neutrality, Nixara observed. Yet your own harmonic pattern shifts when you say his name. There is history between you. Jax couldn't help but be impressed by her perceptiveness. Professional history, he acknowledged. Not positive. I see. Her faceted eyes studied him with unnerving intensity. And now you find yourself in a position to potentially thwart his plans. A fortunate coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences, Your Majesty. Nor do I, she agreed, rising to her feet in a fluid motion. Which is why I wonder if perhaps our meeting was not quite as random as it appeared. My morning meditation rarely takes me to the human encampment. Yet today, it did directly to your tent, where I found your harmonic resonance, unexpectedly compatible with my own. Jax stood as well, unsure how to respond to this suggestion. Compatible. The purring you experienced, she explained, her crest flickering with what might have been embarrassment. It is a form of harmonic alignment that occurs rarely, even among Salen. That it would happen with a human is unprecedented. Before Jax could process the implications of this revelation, another chime sounded, and the door rippled to admit Captain Arel, looking even more tense than before. Your Majesty, he said with a formal bow. The delegates are assembled for the opening ceremony. Your presence is required. Thank you, Captain. She turned back to Jax. We will continue this discussion later. For now, you will accompany me to the ceremony. Stay close. Observe everything. And if you sense any harmonic disturbances, even subtle ones, alert me immediately. As they made their way through the magnificent crystal corridors of the palace, Jax tried to absorb the surreal turn his life had taken. 24 hours ago, he had been unpacking equipment crates. Now he was walking beside the Salen Queen as her personal harmonic advisor, hunting for evidence of a conspiracy led by his former commander. And somewhere in the midst of all this political intrigue, there was the strange, undeniable fact that the Queen of the Salen Empire had been purring on his chest that morning, an act that apparently held far more significance in her culture than he had initially realized. The Grand Resonance Chamber lived up to its name, a vast, cathedral-like space with soaring crystal arches that seemed to defy gravity, its walls alive with patterns of light that pulsed in complex rhythms. Delegates from 17 different species were arranged in a semicircle facing an elevated platform where the Salen royal ministers were already assembled. As Queen Nixara entered, with Jax and Captain Arel flanking her, a wave of harmonic tones swept through the chamber, a formal greeting that Jax could feel resonating in his bones. The Queen responded with her own harmonic signature, amplified by the acoustic properties of the space. Jax noticed the immediate reactions to his presence beside the Queen. The human delegation, led by Ambassador Vega, looked varying degrees of shocked, confused, and alarmed. The Salen nobility, positioned closest to the royal platform, displayed crest patterns that even Jax could interpret as outrage and disapproval. As they took their positions on the platform, Queen Nixara addressed the assembly, her harmonic voice perfectly modulated to carry to every corner of the vast space. Distinguished delegates, ministers, and honored guests, we gather today to begin a dialogue that will shape the future of interstellar relations for generations to come. The Harmony Conference represents our collective commitment to peaceful cooperation and mutual prosperity. While she continued her formal welcome address, Jax scanned the chamber carefully, extending his harmonic awareness as far as he dared. The space was filled with a cacophony of biological and technological frequencies, the unique resonance signatures of different species, the subtle hums of translation devices, the grand harmonics of the chamber itself. Trying to isolate any potential threat pattern was like searching for a specific whisper in a hurricane. Yet, as the ceremony progressed, Jax began to notice something strange, a subtle dissonance in the harmonic field of the chamber, barely perceptible even to his enhanced senses. It wasn't an active attack like the one that morning, but rather a positioning, a laying of groundwork. Someone was very carefully establishing harmonic nodes throughout the chamber, like planting seeds that could later bloom into something more dangerous. He leaned slightly closer to the queen. "There's something happening with the harmonics in the chamber," he whispered. "Not an attack yet, but preparation for one. Multiple nodes. Very subtle." Without breaking the flow of her address, she gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Then, seamlessly, she transitioned to introducing the various delegations, buying time while Jax continued his analysis. Slowly, carefully, Jax traced the dissonant patterns, following their subtle threads through the harmonic field. They converged at a point near the rear of the chamber, where a group of what appeared to be technical staff were monitoring equipment. One of them, a tall, thin human with a shock of white hair, was making minute adjustments to what looked like a standard atmospheric regulator. Except Jax knew it wasn't standard at all. The harmonic signature emanating from it matched the attack pattern from that morning Harrow's signature. "Third equipment bank from the left," Jax murmured to Captain Arell. "The human technician with white hair. He's setting up some kind of harmonic device disguised as environmental equipment." Arl's crest flickered with skepticism, but to his credit, he signaled discreetly to his security team. Two Salen guards began to make their way casually toward the indicated position. The white-haired technician noticed the approaching guards and glanced up sharply. His eyes met Jax's across the chamber, and in that moment, Jax felt a cold recognition. The man might not be Harrow himself, but he was definitely one of Harrow's operatives. What happened next unfolded with nightmarish speed. The technician pressed something on his control panel, and suddenly, the subtle harmonic nodes throughout the chamber activated simultaneously. A wave of discordant frequencies slammed into the assembly like an invisible tsunami. Salen delegates collapsed instantly, their sensitive neural systems overwhelmed by the harmonic assault. The queen swayed on her feet, her crest flaring with pain, but she remained standing through sheer force of will. Jax grabbed her arm to steady her, while simultaneously reaching out with his harmonic sense to analyze the attack pattern. It was brilliant and devastating, a self-reinforcing field that used the natural acoustic properties of the chamber to amplify its effect. And it was specifically calibrated to target Salen neurophysiology while leaving other species relatively unaffected. "Cover your crests," he shouted to the Salen guards who were still conscious. "It's targeting your primary neural receptors." Captain Arell, struggling to remain upright, bellowed orders to his remaining functional guards. Two of them managed to reach the white-haired technician, but he had already begun retreating toward an exit, along with several other staff members who were clearly part of the operation. Jax made a split-second decision. "Captain, get the queen to safety. I'm going after them." Before Errol could protest, Jax was sprinting across the chamber, weaving through the chaos of panicked delegates and fallen Salen. The harmonic assault continued to pulse through the space, but as a human, Jax felt it only as a painful pressure in his skull, rather than the neural devastation it inflicted on the Salen. He burst through the same exit the saboteurs had used, finding himself in a service corridor. Ahead, he caught a glimpse of the white-haired man and two accomplices hurrying around a corner. Jax followed, pushing his aging body to its limits. The corridor opened onto a loading area where a sleek transport vehicle hovered, its engines already humming with power. The white-haired man and his companions were boarding when Jax caught up to them. "Stop!" Jax shouted, skidding to a halt several meters from the vehicle. The white-haired man turned, his thin lips curving into a cold smile. Well, Jax called her. "Harrow said you might be here, though even he didn't anticipate your elevated position." His hand moved to a device at his belt. "He sends his regards." Jax dove sideways just as the man activated the device. A focused beam of harmonic energy scorched the spot where he had been standing, leaving the crystalline floor visibly warped and smoking. Rolling to his feet, Jax grabbed a loading hook from a nearby rack and hurled it at the vehicle's propulsion manifold. The improvised weapon struck with surprising accuracy, jamming itself into the delicate machinery. Sparks erupted, and the vehicle lurched sickeningly to one side. The white-haired man cursed and fired again, the harmonic weapon sending another destructive beam toward Jax, who barely managed to duck behind a storage container. The beam hit the container instead, and Jax felt the material begin to resonate dangerously. He scrambled away just before it shattered into thousands of razor-sharp fragments. Using the momentary distraction, Jax circled around to approach from another angle. The damaged transport was now making an ominous whining sound, its flight systems clearly compromised. "Harrow's getting sloppy, sending amateurs," Jax called out, trying to keep the man talking while he maneuvered closer. "Or maybe you're just expendable." The taunt hit its mark. The white-haired man stepped away from the vehicle, his face contorted with anger. "Amateurs, we just incapacitated the entire Salen leadership with a harmonic field that you, their pet human frequency detector, didn't spot until it was too late." "True," Jax acknowledged, edging closer. "But your escape plan leaves something to be desired." The man raised his weapon again. But this time, Jax was ready. He focused his harmonic sense on the device, feeling for its operational frequency. Every piece of technology had a resonance pattern, and with enough concentration, Jax could sometimes interfere with it. He reached out mentally, pushing against the harmonic pattern of the weapon. The effort was like trying to divert a river with his bare hands, painful and nearly impossible. But he managed to create just enough dissonance to disrupt the firing sequence. When the white-haired man pulled the trigger, the weapon emitted a pitiful squeal and then went dead in his hand. Jax closed the distance between them in 3 quick strides and landed a solid punch to the man's jaw, sending him sprawling onto the loading dock. The 2 accomplices, seeing their leader fall, abandoned the damaged transport and fled down an adjacent corridor. Jax picked up the disabled harmonic weapon and stood over the fallen saboteur. "Now, you're going to tell me exactly what Harrow is planning, or I'm going to get creative with this device once I fix it." The white-haired man glared up at him, blood trickling from his split lip. "You've changed, Calder. You used to have principles." "I still do," Jax replied coldly. "They've just been refined by experience." Before he could press further, a squad of Salen guards burst into the loading area, led by Captain Arel. They quickly secured the saboteur, though Errol gave Jax an appraising look that suggested he was reassessing his initial judgment. "The Queen?" Jax asked urgently. "Secure and recovering," Errol replied. Her natural harmonic resilience protected her from the worst effects. Others were not so fortunate. His crest darkened with what Jax interpreted as a mixture of anger and grief. "There are casualties." Jax felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. People had died because he hadn't detected the threat in time, just like before. "This one," he said, nodding to the captured saboteur, "was working with Admiral Harrow, the same person behind this morning's attack. They're targeting the Queen specifically, though I don't know why yet." Arl's faceted eyes narrowed. "You seem quite certain of this connection." "The harmonic signature is distinctive," Jax explained, "and this operative all but confirmed it." "Then he will be thoroughly questioned," Errol said, in a tone that made the white-haired man visibly pale. As they made their way back to the palace proper, Jax could feel the remnants of the harmonic attack still resonating through the crystal structure. It would take time for the dissonance to fully dissipate, and longer still for the affected Salen to recover. Queen Nixara was waiting in a secured chamber, surrounded by medical staff and her closest advisors. Her crest was dimmer than usual, but her posture remained regal and unbowed. "Advisor Calder," she acknowledged as he entered. Captain Errol informs me you captured one of the perpetrators. Yes, Your Majesty. He's being held for questioning. Jax hesitated, then added, I believe he's working for Admiral Marcus Harrow of Earth's military command. The same person I suspect was behind this morning's attack. A murmur ran through the assembled Salen officials. One of them, an elderly figure with an elaborately patterned crest, stepped forward. Your Majesty, if Earth's military is behind these attacks, it constitutes an act of war. We must respond accordingly. That would be premature. Counselor Thalak, the Queen replied calmly. We have a single operative in custody, and the testimony of Advisor Calder. She glanced at Jax. While I value his insight, diplomatic protocol requires more substantial evidence before making such accusations. But Your Majesty, Thalak began. Furthermore, she continued, if these attacks are indeed orchestrated by an Earth military officer, it does not necessarily implicate the entire Earth government. It may well be a rogue operation. She turned to Jax. Would you agree? Advisor. Jax chose his words carefully, aware of the diplomatic minefield. Admiral Harrow has significant autonomy and resources. If he's behind these attacks, it's entirely possible he's acting without official sanction. Convenient, Thalak muttered, his crest flashing with skepticism. What is clear, Queen Nixara stated firmly, is that these attacks specifically target Salen harmonic vulnerabilities with remarkable precision. Such knowledge is not commonly available to outsiders. Her gaze swept the room, which suggests either an extraordinary level of intelligence gathering by our adversaries, or a leak from within, Captain Errol finished grimly. Indeed. The Queen's crest pulsed with determination. Captain, I want a complete security review of everyone with access to our neural harmonic data. Counselor Thalak, you will temporarily suspend the conference proceedings while we secure the resonance chamber and check all delegations for additional sabotage devices. And what of this, human advisor? Thalak asked, making little attempt to hide his disdain. Jax Calder remains at my side, she said with finality. His unique abilities have already proven invaluable, and I suspect we will need them again before this crisis is resolved. As the meeting dispersed, the Queen gestured for Jax to remain behind. When they were alone, apart from two royal guards stationed discreetly by the door, she spoke in a lower, more intimate harmonic register. You did well today, though I sense you do not agree. Jax shook his head. People died. I should have detected the harmonics sooner. Perhaps, she acknowledged. But without you, many more would have perished, myself included. The technique used was sophisticated. Few Salen would have recognized it in time, let alone a human. With respect, Your Majesty, that's exactly what troubles me. This attack employed advanced knowledge of Salen harmonic vulnerabilities, knowledge that very few humans should possess. He hesitated, then decided to risk complete honesty. Admiral Harrow was involved in specialized research into cross-species harmonic warfare, research that I participated in before my fall from grace. Her faceted eyes studied him with that unnerving intensity again. You believe he is using knowledge you helped gather against us now? It's possible, Jax admitted, the admission painful. Though the techniques have clearly been refined since my involvement. To his surprise, she moved closer and placed a slender, four-fingered hand on his shoulder. The contact sent a strange, not unpleasant tingling sensation through his body. Guilt is a heavy burden, Jax Calder, but it is rarely as deserved as we believe. Her harmonic voice seemed to resonate directly with something inside him. What matters now is what you choose to do with your knowledge and abilities. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of a human woman, tall, angular, with sharp eyes, and an air of intense focus. She wore the credentials of a journalist, though her confident stride suggested she was accustomed to entering spaces most reporters couldn't access. "Your Majesty," she said with a respectful but minimal bow. "Mara Cade, Interstellar Press Consortium. I was hoping for a statement regarding the attack." Queen Nixara's crest flickered with what Jax was beginning to recognize as mild amusement. "Ms. Cade, your reputation precedes you. However, this is hardly the appropriate time for an interview." "Actually, Your Majesty, it's precisely the right time," Mara countered smoothly. "Rumors are already spreading about the nature of the attack. Without an official statement, speculation will run wild, potentially damaging interspecies relations at a critical moment." The Queen considered this, then nodded slightly. "A valid point. You may quote me as saying that there was an isolated security incident which is being thoroughly investigated. The conference will resume once appropriate safety measures have been implemented." Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's rather nonspecific, Your Majesty." "It is all that can be responsibly said at this time," the Queen replied firmly. The journalist's attention shifted to Jax. "And you are—" Before Jax could answer, Queen Nixara spoke. "This is Jax Calder, my temporary Harmony advisor." Mara's eyebrows shot up. Harmony advisor, a human. She studied Jax with new interest. "Fascinating. And what exactly does a human Harmony advisor do for the Sailing Queen?" "That's classified," Jax said flatly, not liking the calculating look in the reporter's eyes. "Is it?" Mara smiled slightly. "Well, Mr. Calder, perhaps we could discuss what isn't classified. For instance, your rather dramatic career transition from Earth intelligence operative to whatever this is." Jax felt a cold prickle of alarm. This woman knew who he was, which meant she had done her research or someone had briefed her. "Ms. Cade," Queen Nixara interjected smoothly. "While I appreciate the importance of a free press, I must ask you to direct official inquiries through the proper diplomatic channels. Advisor Calder's role is a matter of royal prerogative and not open for public discussion at this time." Mara looked like she might press the issue, but instead gave a slight nod. "Of course, Your Majesty, though I hope you realize that no comment often speaks volumes." She handed Jax a small communication chip. "When you're ready to provide actual information, contact me. The public deserves the truth, especially when it involves potential cross-species conflict." After she departed, Jax turned the communication chip over in his fingers thoughtfully. "She knows something." "Most likely," the Queen agreed. "The question is whether she is merely pursuing a story, or if her interest has other motivations." "You think she could be connected to the attacks?" Queen Nixara's crest shifted in a pattern Jax hadn't seen before. "I think, Advisor Calder, that we can trust no one unequivocally at this juncture. Not even, perhaps, each other." Despite her words, her harmonic tones carried no suspicion, rather, a pragmatic acceptance of their situation. "Fair enough," Jax acknowledged. "Though you should know, if I were part of this conspiracy, I'm doing a terrible job of it so far." That earned him another cascade of harmonic laughter. "Indeed you are, which is either compelling evidence of your innocence or of your exceptional cunning. I've been called many things, Your Majesty, but exceptionally cunning has rarely been among them." Her crest flickered with amusement again. "Then we shall proceed on the assumption of your innocence, while I continue to evaluate your competence." She moved toward the door. "Come. If we are to uncover this conspiracy, we must first understand its scope. There is something I wish to show you, something few outsiders have ever seen." Jax followed her through a series of increasingly secure areas of the palace, eventually reaching what appeared to be a dead end in a crystalline corridor. The Queen placed her palm against an unmarked section of wall, which rippled and then parted to reveal a hidden lift platform. "The Resonance Library," she explained as they descended. "The repository of all Salen harmonic knowledge." The platform opened into a vast chamber that took Jax's breath away. Unlike the grand, cathedral-like spaces of the public palace, this was an intimate forest of crystal columns that seemed to vibrate with contained energy. Each column emitted a soft glow and a barely audible hum. "Every column is a harmonic record," Queen Nixara explained, guiding him through the forest of knowledge. "Not merely data, but living memory, the actual frequency patterns of experiences, discoveries, and wisdom spanning thousands of years of Salen history." Jax felt overwhelmed by the harmonic energy surrounding him. Each crystal seemed to call to him in a different frequency, offering knowledge, if only he knew how to access it. "This is incredible," he managed. "But why show me this? Surely this place is among your most closely guarded secrets." "It is," she confirmed, "which is why I'm troubled by this." She led him to a specific column that, unlike the others, appeared darkened and silent. This crystal contained our most sensitive harmonic defense protocols, the exact frequency patterns that would be needed to launch the kind of attack we experience today. Jax examined the darkened crystal carefully. "It's been drained somehow." "Precisely. Not physically removed, which would have triggered alarms, but energetically copied." Her crest dimmed with concern. Such an act would require both advanced harmonic technology and intimate knowledge of our security systems. "An inside job," Jax concluded grimly. "So it would appear, and given the timing," her voice trailed off. "The conference," Jax finished. "Someone doesn't want this alliance to proceed." Queen Nixara nodded slowly. "The question is, who stands to benefit from discord between our peoples? Certainly not the majority of Salen or humans." Jax's mind was racing. "In my experience, when politics and violence intersect, it's rarely ideology alone that drives it. Follow the money, and you usually find the truth." "A cynical perspective," she observed, "but not without merit. If there is a financial motivation behind these attacks, we must discover it." She gestured to another area of the library. "Perhaps the trade records will offer some insight." As they moved deeper into the library, Jax felt a growing sense that they were on the right track. Harrow had always been ambitious, but his sudden rise to power after Jax's downfall had been meteoric. If he was involved in a plot against the Salen monarchy, there had to be more at stake than mere military advantage. What they didn't yet know was how far the conspiracy reached, and how much time they had before the next attack. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear: the harmony between worlds was threatened by a carefully orchestrated discord, and Jax was once again at the center of a deadly game. Only this time, he was determined to change the outcome. The Resonance Library yielded its secrets slowly, even with Queen Nixara's direct access. They spent hours reviewing harmonic records of trade agreements, security protocols, and diplomatic exchanges. Jax's head throbbed with the effort of processing so much alien information, but gradually, a pattern began to emerge. "There," he said, pointing to a recurring signature in the trade records. "This corporate entity appears in numerous transactions involving restricted harmonic technology, Helios Combine." The Queen's crest flickered with recognition. "A multi-planetary conglomerate, ostensibly focused on medical applications of harmonic science. They maintain a presence in both human and Salen space. And they've dramatically increased their acquisitions of certain materials in the past year," Jax noted, connecting different records. "Specific crystalline compounds that, if I'm understanding correctly, are essential for advanced harmonic amplification. The same technology that would be required for the attacks we've witnessed," Queen Nixara confirmed, her harmonic voice tight with concern. Their research was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Arel, accompanied by an unusual Salen, whom Jax hadn't met before. This newcomer was shorter than most Salen, with 6 limbs instead of the typical 4, and a crest that pulsed with rapid, complex patterns that suggested an extremely active mind. "Your Majesty," Errol began formally, "Tessic has completed the preliminary analysis of the sabotage device." The 6-limbed Salen stepped forward eagerly, 3 of his hands simultaneously manipulating a holographic display, while another adjusted some kind of scanning device attached to his crest. His harmonic speech pattern was faster than any Salen Jax had encountered, with overlapping frequencies that created a unique, almost musical quality. "Fascinating construction," Tessic said, his crest flashing with excitement. "Deceptively simple exterior housing, standard atmospheric regulation components, but internally modified with a crystalline resonator of exceptional purity. The harmonic modulation is unlike anything in our current database, combines Salen principles with what appears to be human engineering approaches." He thrust the holographic display toward Jax, apparently assuming that a human would need the visual representation to understand. The display showed a complex 3-dimensional schematic of the device they'd recovered from the resonance chamber. "See this resonator configuration, brilliant adaptation of primitive materials. Whoever designed this has extensively studied both Salen harmonic science and human improvisational engineering. The signature is distinctive. I'd recognize it anywhere." Jax studied the schematic carefully. The design did indeed show a hybrid approach that married Salen precision with human practicality. And there was something familiar about the configuration. "You recognize it," Queen Nixara observed, noticing his expression. Jax nodded slowly. "Parts of it, yes. This resonator array, it's based on theoretical work from Earth's Harmonic Defense Initiative. Research that Admiral Harrow oversaw, and that I contributed to." Tessic's crest flashed with surprise. "You helped design this, but this is extraordinarily advanced for human harmonic science." "I didn't design this specific device," Jax clarified. "But some of the core principles, yes, I helped develop those." The admission left a bitter taste in his mouth. The research was supposed to be for defensive applications only. "A common rationalization in weapons development," Captain Arel commented dryly. Before Jax could respond, a subtle vibration ran through the crystal floor beneath them. Not an attack, but a notification. Queen Nixara placed her palm against a nearby column, which illuminated in response. "The prisoner is ready for questioning," she announced. "He has been stabilized and placed in a harmonic damping field to prevent any self-harm or communication attempts." "I should be present for the interrogation," Jax said. "I know what questions to ask about Harrow." The Queen nodded. "Agreed. Captain Arel, please make the necessary arrangements. Tessic, continue your analysis, particularly focus on tracing the origin of the crystalline components." "With pleasure, Your Majesty," Tessic replied enthusiastically, his 6 limbs already manipulating various instruments. "I've been developing a new resonance tracing algorithm that should help identify the specific mining operation based on the harmonic signature of the crystal matrix." As they made their way to the secure holding area, Jax found himself walking beside Captain Errol, who maintained a professional silence that nonetheless radiated skepticism. "You have questions," Jax finally said. Errol's crest flickered briefly. "Many. But foremost, if you recognized elements of your own research in these attacks, why did you not mention this earlier?" "Because until I saw Tessic's analysis, I wasn't certain," Jax replied honestly. "And because admitting my connection to technology now being used to attack your people isn't exactly likely to inspire trust." "No," Errol agreed. "It is not. Yet you've chosen to reveal it anyway. Hiding it would be worse. And besides," Jax added with a grim smile, "if I were part of this conspiracy, I'd hardly point out the connection to my own past work. Unless that is precisely what a cunning operative would do to establish credibility, Errol countered, though his tone had softened slightly. They had reached the holding area, a chamber whose crystalline walls were etched with complex patterns that Jax recognized as harmonic dampening fields. Inside, seated on a simple platform, was the white-haired saboteur. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from resigned to alert when he saw Jax. "Mr. Calder," he said, his voice hoarse. "Come to finish our conversation." "Something like that," Jax replied, studying the man more carefully now. There was something vaguely familiar about him, though Jax couldn't quite place it. "Let's start with your name." The prisoner smiled thinly. "Matthews, though I doubt that means anything to you." It didn't, but Jax filed it away regardless. "You work for Admiral Harrow." "I serve Earth's interests," Matthews corrected. "As does the Admiral. As did you, once upon a time, before you developed a conscience." He said the last word with unmistakable contempt. "Earth's interests aren't served by attacking allies," Jax countered. Matthews laughed, a harsh sound in the dampened acoustics of the cell. "Allies. The Salen see us as pets at best, resources to be exploited at worst. They control the harmonics. They control interstellar travel. They're keeping humanity contained, dependent." "That is a significant mischaracterization of our relationship with Earth," Queen Nixara said, her harmonic voice causing Matthews to wince slightly, despite the dampening field. "You would say that," he retorted. "The conference is just another way to formalize human subservience. More treaties that give the appearance of equality while ensuring Salen dominance." Jax studied the man's expression. There was genuine belief there, not just rehearsed propaganda. "And Harrow's solution is what assassination destabilization. How does that improve humanity's position?" Matthews leaned forward intently. "You of all people should understand, Calder. The only way to deal with a superior force is to exploit their vulnerabilities. The Salen have kept their harmonic science to themselves for centuries. Harrow found a way to level the playing field. Through Helios Combine," Jax said, watching for a reaction. He got one, a flicker of surprise quickly masked. "I'm not discussing operational details." "You don't need to," Jax replied. "We already know Helios is involved. What we don't know is why Harrow would partner with a multi-planetary corporation that has as much invested in Salen markets as in human ones." Matthews shrugged. "Business and patriotism aren't mutually exclusive." "No. But profit and war often go hand in hand," Jax pointed out. "Is that what this is about, creating harmonic weapons to sell to both sides of a conflict Harrow himself is instigating?" For the first time, Matthews looked genuinely confused. "What, no? Harrow isn't profiteering. He's a patriot, dedicated to securing humanity's independence. By partnering with Helios Combine, a corporation known for selling technology to the highest bidder, regardless of species." Jax pressed. "Helios is just a means to an end," Matthews insisted. "They have the manufacturing capabilities, the distribution networks, the access. Once we've secured the necessary leverage, the relationship will be reevaluated." Jax exchanged a glance with Queen Nixara, whose crest was pulsing with patterns that suggested she was processing the implications rapidly. "Matthews," Jax said, adopting a more conversational tone. "I know Harrow. Worked with him for years. He's many things. But naive isn't one of them. If he's in bed with Helios, he's fully aware of who he's dealing with." "You don't know him anymore," Matthews said defensively. "He's changed since you betrayed him." That caught Jax off guard. "Betrayed him, he set me up. Used my abilities to target innocents. Then hung me out to dry when it went wrong." Matthews shook his head vehemently. "That's not how it happened. Those innocents were Salen sympathizers undermining Earth security. You got cold feet, compromised the operation, Harrow had no choice but to salvage what he could. The alternate version of events was so at odds with Jax's experience that for a moment he was speechless. Had Harrow actually convinced his people that Jax was the traitor in that scenario? "We're getting sidetracked," Captain Arell interjected. "What is the next phase of your operation?" There were multiple operatives at the conference. Where are they now? Matthews pressed his lips together firmly, clearly done with cooperation. Queen Nixara stepped closer to the containment field, her tall form imposing even through the harmonic dampening. "Mr. Matthews, you have attacked my person and my people. Under Salen law, this alone is punishable by permanent neural recalibration, what your species might call mind-wiping. However, I am offering you an opportunity to mitigate your sentence through cooperation." "I'm an Earth citizen," Matthews responded, though with less confidence than before. "You have no jurisdiction over me." "The attack occurred on Salen's sovereign territory," she countered smoothly. "And, under the Interstellar Criminal Extradition Treaty, signed by Earth's government 3 years ago, crimes of attempted regicide are specifically excluded from diplomatic immunity provisions." Jax was impressed he hadn't known about that particular clause, but the Queen's confident citation of it suggested it was genuine. Matthews paled slightly. "I want to speak with an Earth representative." "That can be arranged," the Queen agreed. "After you provide actionable information regarding imminent threats to this conference." The prisoner seemed to be weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. "There's a secondary operation planned for the Harmony Festival tomorrow. I don't know the details compartmentalization, but it involves something called a silence net." Jax saw Queen Nixara's crest flash with alarm patterns, though she kept her harmonic voice steady. "Explain this term." Matthews shrugged. "Like I said, I don't know the specifics, just that it's designed to create a citywide harmonic dampening field. Not lethal, but it would effectively disable all Salen neural functions temporarily, leaving the city defenseless," Captain Errol concluded grimly. "Or creating mass panic," Jax added. "Either way, it would destroy the conference and any chance of a meaningful alliance." Queen Nixara turned to Captain Arell. "Increase security for the Harmony Festival. Full-spectrum harmonic scanning for all attendees and equipment." "Yes, Your Majesty." Errol bowed and departed to implement the orders. Once he had gone, the Queen addressed Matthews again. "Where is Admiral Harrow now?" The prisoner's expression hardened. "I won't answer that." "Very well." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mr. Matthews, I suggest you reconsider your position before your formal interrogation begins. Captain Errol's methods are thorough." When they were outside the holding area, Jax gave her a questioning look. "Neural recalibration, is that really a thing?" A flickering pattern crossed her crest that Jax was beginning to recognize as her equivalent of a wry smile. "It exists as a theoretical procedure. Whether it has ever been implemented is classified." "An effective bluff, then?" "Diplomacy often requires a certain theatrical element," she acknowledged. "Though in this case, the gravity of his crimes would indeed justify exceptional measures." They began walking through the crystalline corridors, their path taking them deeper into the palace complex. The Harmony Festival, Jax mused. It would be the perfect target, maximum visibility. Crowds. Minimal security due to its cultural nature rather than political. "Yes," she agreed. "And particularly vulnerable to harmonic disruption, given its focus on resonant celebrations." "We need to know more about this silence net," Jax said. "Tessic might have insights, if it's based on Salen technology." "Indeed. But first, there is another resource we should consult." She led him to a secure lift platform, similar to the one they'd used to access the Resonance Library. The Echo Tower. The name stirred something in Jax's memory, a reference from his intelligence briefings long ago. "I thought that was just a legend, a repository of forbidden harmonic knowledge." "Not forbidden," she corrected as the platform began to ascend, rather than descend. Protected. There is a difference. They emerged into the open air, atop one of the highest crystal spires of the palace. The view was breathtaking. Harmonia spires spread out below them, like a forest of gleaming musical notation, while the twin suns painted the sky in shades of amber and violet. Before them stood a slender tower of pure, translucent crystal that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Unlike the living architecture of the rest of the city, the Echo Tower had a more ancient, almost primitive quality, as though it had been grown in an earlier era, according to different harmonic principles. Few Salen ever visit this place, Queen Nixara explained as they approached the tower's entrance. The resonances within can be unsettling, even for those accustomed to harmonic immersion. Then why bring me here? Jax asked. Because the Echo Tower contains records of all harmonic weapons ever developed by or against the Salen. If the Silence Net has historical precedent, we will find it here. She placed her palm against the tower's surface, which rippled and parted like liquid crystal. And because your unique abilities may allow you to perceive patterns that even I cannot. Inside, the tower was a hollow column, its walls lined with crystalline niches containing what appeared to be small, irregular shards of material. Each shard emitted a faint, distinctive tone that combined with the others to create an eerie, constantly shifting harmony. Each fragment is a resonance record, the Queen explained, not catalogued and organized like the library, but preserved in their raw state, the actual harmonic signatures of weapons, defensive systems, and in some cases, the attacks themselves. Jax felt the resonances washing over him like waves, each carrying fragments of information, emotion, and memory. It was overwhelming, yet somehow not as disorienting as he'd expected. I can hear them, he said quietly. Not just the frequencies, but the intent behind them. This one, he pointed to a jagged red crystal. It's violent, designed to shatter neural pathways. And this, he indicated a smooth, blue fragment, is defensive, a shield pattern. Queen Nixara's crest flickered with surprise. You perceive more than you should be able to, even with your enhanced sensitivity. Most non-Salen would experience these as nothing more than discordant noise. Jax moved deeper into the tower, drawn by a particular resonance that seemed to call to him specifically. In a niche near the center of the chamber, he found a small, dark crystal that emitted almost no visible light but produced a subtle, penetrating tone that seemed to bypass his ears entirely and resonate directly with his nervous system. This one, he said, reaching toward it but stopping short of actually touching the fragment. It's familiar somehow. The Queen moved to his side, her crest pattern shifting to what Jax now recognized as deep concentration. Yes, she confirmed. This is a harmonic dampening field, similar to what Matthews described as the Silence Net, though on a much smaller scale. But there's more, Jax insisted, focusing intently on the subtle resonance. There's a signature in the harmonic pattern. It's Harrow. I'd know it anywhere. Queen Nixara's faceted eyes widened. That's impossible. This fragment is over 20 years old, recovered from an attempted infiltration of a Salen research facility. 20 years ago, Jax repeated slowly. Harrow was a junior officer in Earth's Advanced Harmonics Division, where I was first recruited. The implications were staggering. He's been working on this technology for decades, and apparently in connection with Salen traders. The Queen added grimly. No outsider could have penetrated our security without internal assistance. Jax studied the dark crystal fragment more carefully. There's another pattern here. Beneath Harrow's signature, something collective, distributed, multiple harmonics working in concert. The choir, Queen Nixara whispered, her harmonic voice dropping to a register so low that Jax felt it more than heard it. "The choir, what is that?" She seemed reluctant to explain. Her crest patterns shifting to colors Jax hadn't seen before, deep indigos and violets that suggested discomfort, perhaps even fear. "It is not spoken of among my people. A legend. Most would say a conspiracy theory. Others would insist." She touched the crystal fragment lightly. "But this suggests the legend may have substance." "What kind of legend?" Jax pressed. The Queen's faceted eyes met his directly. "The legend speaks of a network of harmonically gifted individuals, linked into a collective consciousness through technology that amplifies their natural abilities. A living computational system of unprecedented power, controlled by interests outside normal governance structures. A shadow organization using people as processors." Jax felt a chill run through him. "That's abhorrent, yes," she agreed. "Which is why most dismiss it as fantasy. The ethical implications alone would be—" Her voice trailed off. Jax's mind was racing. If this choir is real, and if Harrow has been connected to it for decades, then what we're facing isn't just a rogue admiral with a grudge. It's a systematic operation with deep roots and resources. "And potentially," Queen Nixara added, "with operatives embedded throughout both our governments." The implications were staggering. What had seemed like a targeted attack on the Salen monarchy might actually be part of a much larger, longer-term strategy, one that stretched back decades and involved elements Jax had never suspected. As they descended from the Echo Tower, both lost in troubled thoughts, Jax felt a new determination solidifying within him. This wasn't just about personal vindication anymore. If Harrow and this mysterious choir were manipulating interspecies relations for their own ends, the consequences could be devastating for both humans and Salen alike. Whatever it took, he had to stop them. And for the first time in years, he wasn't facing the fight alone. The Harmony Festival was the cultural centerpiece of the conference, a celebration of resonance arts from across the galaxy. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a magnificent showcase of harmonic cooperation, with performances, exhibitions, and interactive experiences designed to bridge the gaps between different species' perceptions of sound and frequency. Instead, it had become a potential disaster zone, with security forces on high alert and harmonic scanners placed at every entrance to the vast resonance plaza where the festival was to take place. Jax stood beside Queen Nixara on a private viewing platform, surveying the elaborate preparations. Despite the heightened security, the plaza was filling with attendees from all 17 species represented at the conference, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of interstellar cooperation. "Impressive turnout, considering recent events," Jax observed. "The festival is more than mere entertainment," the Queen replied. "It is a demonstration of cultural exchange, a reminder of what we stand to gain through alliance." Captain Arel approached, his crest patterns indicating professional concern. "Your Majesty, all security measures are in place. Tessic has calibrated the harmonic scanners to detect any anomalies consistent with the specifications of the device recovered yesterday." "And our friend Matthews?" Jax inquired. "Secure, and becoming more cooperative after a night in isolation. He has provided additional details about Harrow's operation, though nothing specific enough to identify the silence net mechanism." Errol's gaze shifted to the crowds below. "He did confirm that the operation is scheduled for the main ceremony." Jax nodded grimly. "Then we have about 3 hours to locate and neutralize it." "I will join the security teams," Arl said, his crest flickering with determination. "If there's a threat within the plaza, we will find it." After the captain departed, Queen Nixara turned to Jax. "You are troubled by more than the immediate threat." It wasn't a question, and Jax saw no point in denial. "The Echo Tower records, the choir. Harrow's long-term connection to all this, it suggests a conspiracy, far beyond what I'd imagined." "Yes," she agreed. and one that potentially reaches into the highest levels of both our governments. Before Jax could respond, they were joined by Tessic, the six-limbed Salen engineer, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "Your Majesty Advisor Calder," he exclaimed, his harmonic voice overlapping itself in his enthusiasm. "I've completed my analysis of the crystalline components from the captured device. Most interesting findings." "Go ahead, Tessic," the Queen encouraged. "The resonator crystals are Salen in origin, specifically from the Lyrian mines in the outer colonies. But they've been processed using a technique that doesn't match any registered Salen manufacturer." His limbs manipulated a holographic display showing a molecular analysis. Instead, the processing signature matches samples previously recovered from Helios Combine facilities. "So we have confirmation of Helios involvement," Jax noted. "Yes, but that's not the most interesting part," Tessic continued eagerly. "The harmonic configuration itself contains embedded frequencies I've never encountered before, almost like a signature or watermark within the operational harmonics." The display shifted to show a complex waveform, with subtle modulations that Jax immediately recognized as similar to what he'd felt in the Echo Tower. "The choir," he murmured. Tessic's crest flashed with surprise. "You know of this pattern. I've been calling it a harmonic ghost in my notes. But if it has an established designation..." "It's a theory we're exploring," Queen Nixara interjected smoothly. "Continue your analysis, but keep this information strictly confidential." As Tessic departed, still bubbling with technical observations, Jax caught sight of a familiar figure moving through the crowd below Maracade, the journalist who had confronted them earlier. She was speaking with various delegates, her manner casual, but her attention focused in a way that suggested she was hunting for specific information. "Your journalist friend is persistent," the Queen observed, following his gaze. "Not my friend," Jax corrected. "But yes, persistent, and possibly more informed than she should be." "You suspect her involvement with Harrow?" Jax shook his head slowly. "Not directly. She's a journalist. She follows stories where they lead. But someone may be feeding her information to shape the narrative around these attacks." Before they could discuss it further, a subtle vibration ran through the platform, a security alert. Captain Errol's voice came through on the Queen's personal communicator. "Your Majesty, we've detected unauthorized harmonic activity near the southern perimeter of the plaza. Security teams are investigating." "We're on our way," Queen Nixara responded, already moving toward the exit. Jax followed, a sense of urgency building. If this was the beginning of the Silence Net activation, they had little time to prevent it. They reached the southern edge of the plaza to find Captain Arell and his security team surrounding what appeared to be an ordinary maintenance access point. Tessic was already there, his six limbs manipulating various scanning devices as he examined the inconspicuous panel. "Ingenious concealment," the engineer explained as they approached. "The harmonic signature is masked by synchronizing with the plaza's natural resonance frequency. It only became detectable when they began the initialization sequence." "Can you disable it?" Jax asked urgently. Tessic's crest flickered with uncertainty. "Possibly, but not quickly. The system has redundancies and is likely connected to other nodes throughout the plaza. Disabling this one might trigger the others to activate prematurely." Jax knelt beside the panel, extending his harmonic sensitivity toward the device. He could feel it now, a subtle, insidious pattern that was gradually amplifying, preparing to synchronize with other similar nodes across the plaza. "It's building toward a harmonic cascade," he realized aloud, each node reinforcing the others until they generate a standing wave that will blanket the entire area. "Precisely," Tessic confirmed. "Very impressive for a human to perceive the resonance architecture so clearly." An idea was forming in Jax's mind, risky, but potentially effective. "We need to create a counter-resonance, not to block the signal, but to redirect it." "Redirect it how?" Captain Arell asked skeptically. "Into itself," Jax explained, already looking around for materials he could use. If we can set up reflection points at the right locations, we can create a feedback loop that will destabilize the entire network. Queen Nixara's crest brightened with understanding. A harmonic mirror. Exactly. Tessic. I need conductive material, anything that can carry and redirect harmonic frequencies. The engineer thought for a moment, then reached into his toolkit and produced several lengths of specialized cable. These are resonance conduits used for maintenance of the plaza's acoustic systems. Will they suffice? Jax examined the cables briefly. Perfect. Now I need mounting points, ideally at specific intervals around the perimeter of the plaza. While Captain Arel dispatched his security teams to help with the improvised defense system, Jax worked quickly to calculate the necessary configuration. It was like composing a piece of music in reverse, determining where the notes needed to go to cancel out an existing melody. Maracade appeared, seemingly from nowhere, watching their frantic preparations with keen interest. Care to comment on what has security in such a panic? Advisor Calder, she asked, her recorder device at the ready. Not now. Ms. Cade, Jax replied tersely, busy measuring cable lengths. The public has a right to know if they're in danger, she pressed. Especially if it's connected to yesterday's attack. Queen Nixara intervened. Ms. Cade, I understand your commitment to your profession, but at this moment, your presence is hindering critical security operations. I must ask you to withdraw to a safe distance. To Jax's surprise, Mara nodded respectfully. Of course, Your Majesty. But when this is over, I expect a full briefing. She moved back, but not very far, still close enough to observe their activities. With the security team's help, Jax managed to set up his improvised counter-resonance system just as the plaza began to fill for the main ceremony. Cables stretched between strategically placed mounting points, creating an invisible web of potential harmonic reflection. It's not perfect, he admitted to Queen Nixara as they surveyed the completed setup. Without proper calibration equipment, we're relying heavily on my ability to sense the harmonics in real time and adjust accordingly. I have faith in your abilities, she replied, her harmonic voice carrying a warmth that Jax found surprisingly comforting. The ceremony began with a procession of performers representing each delegation, their various instruments and vocal techniques combining to create a genuinely moving demonstration of interspecies harmony. Under different circumstances, Jax would have been fascinated by the artistic achievement. Instead, he was intensely focused on the harmonic field of the plaza, waiting for the first signs of the silence net activation. It came subtly at first, a barely perceptible shift in the background frequencies. If not for his enhanced sensitivity, Jax might have missed it entirely. But there, it was, the initialization sequence beginning to cascade from node to node around the perimeter of the plaza. It's starting, he murmured to Queen Nixara. The silence net is activating. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. What do you need me to do? Stay close, he said. I may need your help to modulate the counter-resonance. As the harmonic disruption built in intensity, Jax began to adjust his improvised system, tightening some cables while loosening others, essentially tuning the entire plaza like a massive instrument. It was exhausting work that required his complete concentration, but gradually, he felt the silence net's harmonic pattern begin to fold back on itself. It's working, he said, allowing himself a moment of cautious optimism. That's when everything went wrong. A secondary harmonic pattern suddenly emerged, cutting through his countermeasures like they weren't even there. This wasn't part of the silence net. It was something else entirely. Something targeted specifically at the Queen. Down, Jax shouted, tackling Queen Nixara to the ground, just as a focused beam of destructive harmonics passed through the space where she had been standing. The beam struck one of the decorative crystal structures instead, causing it to shatter in a spectacular explosion of fragments. Chaos erupted instantly. The crowd panicked, security forces rushed in all directions, and the performers scattered from the stage. Through it all, Jax could feel the silence net continuing to build toward its critical threshold, despite his countermeasures. "We need to get you to safety," he told the Queen, helping her to her feet. "No," she replied firmly. "If the silence net activates fully, everyone in this plaza will be incapacitated. We must complete your plan." Before they could move, a second harmonic beam lanced toward them. This time, Captain Arell intercepted it with a personal shield device, which absorbed the impact but overloaded in the process, leaving him momentarily stunned. "The attack is coming from there." Jax pointed toward a hovering platform near the edge of the plaza, a ceremonial stage that had been part of the performance, but was now occupied by armed figures in nondescript uniforms. "Harrow's people," Queen Nixara concluded. Tessic scrambled over to them, his limbs working frantically to adjust various devices. "The silence net is reaching critical threshold. We have less than 2 minutes before full activation." Jax made a split-second decision. "Tessic, take the Queen to safety. I need to get closer to the main node to complete the feedback loop." "I will not abandon my people," Queen Nixara protested. "You're not," Jax assured her. "You're preserving the leadership they'll need after we stop this attack. Please, Your Majesty." After a moment of visible internal struggle, she nodded. "Be careful," Jax called her. "I have become rather accustomed to your presence." As Tessic led the Queen toward a secure exit, Jax turned his attention to the hovering platform, where Harrow's operatives were continuing to fire harmonic weapons at fleeing civilians. He needed to get past them to reach the main control node of the silence net. Captain Arell, recovering from the shield overload, staggered to his feet beside him. "What is your plan, advisor?" "I need to reach that maintenance hatch behind the platform," Jax explained quickly. "The master node should be there. If I can access it directly, I can reverse the entire network." Arell nodded grimly. "I will provide a diversion." Before Jax could protest, the captain was already moving, signaling to his remaining security personnel. They began a coordinated attack on the hovering platform, drawing fire away from the crowds and, more importantly, away from Jax's intended path. Using the diversion, Jax sprinted toward the maintenance access, dodging panicked festival-goers and keeping low to avoid detection. He could feel the silence net building toward activation. With each passing second, the harmonic pressure becoming almost painful, even to his human nervous system. He reached the access hatch and wrenched it open, revealing a crawl space filled with crystalline technology. At the center was what he immediately recognized as the master node of the silence net, a pulsing crystal matrix connected to the plaza's own harmonic systems. Jax didn't hesitate. Drawing on everything he had learned about Salen harmonics, combined with his own unique sensitivity, he reached out both physically and mentally to the crystal matrix. He placed his hands directly on the primary resonator and focused his consciousness on its harmonic pattern. The pain was immediate and intense, like having every nerve in his body play a different note simultaneously. But through the pain, he could feel the matrix responding to his influence, its rigid pattern beginning to fluctuate. This was what his ability had always been meant for: not destruction, not warfare, but harmonization. Finding the resonance point between different systems and bringing them into alignment. With a final, desperate push of mental effort, Jax inverted the entire harmonic structure of the silence net. Instead of projecting outward in a devastating wave, the accumulated energy collapsed inward, feeding back through the network and burning out each node in sequence. The master node shattered in his hands, cutting them deeply. But Jax barely noticed. He staggered back out of the crawlspace to find the plaza still in chaos. But the immediate threat neutralized. The hovering platform was retreating, pursued by Captain Arell's security forces. Jax slumped against the wall, exhausted beyond measure. He had stopped the silence net, but Harrow's operatives were escaping. The conspiracy remained active, its full extent still unknown. as emergency responders began to flood the plaza, treating the injured and restoring order. Jax felt a presence beside him. Looking up, he found Mara Cade kneeling next to him, her expression not of journalistic hunger, but genuine concern. "That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," she said, pressing a cloth against his bleeding hands. "Probably both," Jax admitted wearily. "Want to tell me what actually happened here off the record, for now?" Jax studied her face, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. Finding none, he made a decision. "What do you know about Helios Combine, Ms. Cade?" A spark of recognition flashed in her eyes. "Enough to know they're involved in things far beyond their public corporate profile. Why? Because I think they're at the center of a conspiracy that threatens both our species," Jax replied. "And I'm going to need help exposing it." For the first time, Mara Cade smiled a genuine expression that transformed her sharp features. Advisor Calder, I believe this is the beginning of a very productive relationship. As security forces secured the plaza and medical teams tended to the injured, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that they had won a battle, but were still very much in danger of losing the war. Harrow was still out there, as was the mysterious choir, and somewhere in the shadows, pulling strings from behind the scenes, were forces that had been manipulating interspecies relations for decades. But for the first time since his fall from grace, Jax felt a sense of purpose, and more importantly, he was no longer fighting alone. The aftermath of the Harmony Festival attack was chaotic but, remarkably, without fatalities. Queen Nixara's quick decision to evacuate the most vulnerable attendees, combined with Captain Errol's security response and Jax's neutralization of the silence net, had prevented what could have been a catastrophic event. In the royal palace's secure war room, Jax sat with the Queen, Captain Arell, Tessic, and somewhat surprisingly, Mara Cade, who had been granted temporary security clearance based on information she had brought to their attention. Helios Combine isn't just involved in harmonic weapons development, Mara explained, displaying a series of financial records on the room's holographic projector. They've been systematically purchasing controlling interests in key industries across both human and Salen space transportation, communication, security systems. Creating dependencies, Queen Nixara observed, her crest pattern suggesting deep concentration. Exactly, Mara confirmed. But here's where it gets really interesting. She brought up a new display showing a complex web of shell companies and subsidiaries. These financial entities all trace back to Helios, and they've been making substantial payments to officials in both governments, particularly those involved in defense procurement and interspecies policy. Jax leaned forward, studying the diagram carefully. They're buying influence on both sides. Not just influence, Mara corrected grimly. They're creating the conditions for conflict while positioning themselves to profit from it. Classic war profiteering, but on an interstellar scale. Tessic, who had been analyzing the technical data recovered from the destroyed SilenceNet components, interjected excitedly. This correlates with my findings. The harmonic technology in these weapons draws on both Salen and human design principles, but integrated in ways neither of our species would typically approach. It's as if there's a third party involved, one, with access to both knowledge bases, but bound by neither's ethical constraints. The choir, Jax murmured. Yes, you've mentioned this entity before, Captain Arell said, his crest flickering with skepticism. But its nature remains frustratingly vague. Queen Nixara's faceted eyes met Jax's briefly before she spoke. There is a legend among my people, a cautionary tale about the misuse of harmonic abilities. It speaks of a collective consciousness created by linking together individuals with natural harmonic talents, amplifying their abilities through technology to create a living computational network of unprecedented power. That sounds more like advanced technology than legend, Mara commented. The line between the two is often thinner than we might wish, the Queen replied. What matters is that if such an entity exists, and if it is under Helios Combine's control, then we're facing something far more dangerous than individual operatives like Harrow. Jax finished. We're facing an organization with the computational power of multiple linked consciousnesses, the financial resources of a multi-planetary corporation, and influence at the highest levels of both our governments. The implications hung heavy in the air, a conspiracy of staggering scope and ambition. But why? Captain Errol asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. What does Helios ultimately gain from derailing the alliance between our species? War, Mara stated simply. Or at least, ongoing tension requiring ever more advanced weapon systems and security measures, all conveniently provided by Helios and its subsidiaries. There's something else, Jax added, thinking back to his confrontation with the white-haired operative. Matthews. Harrow genuinely believes he's acting in humanity's best interests. He sees the Salen as a threat to human independence, keeping us technologically dependent. If Helios has been feeding that narrative, they could be manipulating both sides' fears, Queen Nixara concluded, convincing humans that Salens seek to dominate them, while suggesting to my people that humans cannot be trusted with advanced harmonic technology. Tessic, who had been quietly working on a small device while the discussion continued, suddenly perked up. I've been analyzing the unique harmonic signature we identified as potentially connected to this choir entity. Based on its structure, I believe I can create a detector that would identify its presence in communication streams or data networks. How long would that take? Jax asked. The six-limbed engineer's crest flickered with what might have been embarrassment. I may have already begun the project after our discovery in the Echo Tower. A prototype should be functional within hours. Excellent work, Tessic, Queen Nixara commended. In the meantime, we must determine our next steps. The conference has been temporarily suspended following the attack, but diplomatic channels remain open. We have a narrow window to act before Helios can regroup. Mara, who had been scrolling through additional data on her personal device, looked up with a worried expression. I'm afraid that window might be closing faster than we thought. I've just received word from one of my sources that a major Helios transport vessel has entered orbit the Requiem. Jax felt a chill run through him. Requiem is a mobile command platform, one of Earth's most advanced military vessels, ostensibly on loan to Helios for research purposes. If it's here, then the next phase of their operation is imminent, Captain Errol concluded grimly. Queen Nixara rose from her seat, her tall form seeming to gather the light in the room around her. Captain Errol, increase security throughout Harmonia Spires, and implement the emergency protocols we discussed. Tessic, prioritize your detection system. We need to know if this choir is actively monitoring our communications. Ms. Cade, continue your investigation into Helios's financial connections, particularly any link to my own government officials. She turned to Jax, her crest patterns shifting to colors he hadn't seen before, a mixture of determination and something more personal. Advisor Calder, you and I will review the security of the palace's harmonic systems. If Harrow intends to strike again, he may target our central defense grid. As the meeting dispersed, Queen Nixara led Jax to a private chamber adjacent to the war room, a smaller space with simpler, crystalline architecture, clearly designed for confidential conversations. That wasn't the real reason you wanted to speak privately, Jax observed once the door had sealed behind them. No, she acknowledged, her harmonic voice dropping to a more intimate register. I wanted to discuss the Purring incident. Jax felt a flush of embarrassment. With everything that had happened, he had almost forgotten how this strange adventure had begun, waking to find the Salen Queen emitting that peculiar vibration on his chest. I'm still not entirely clear on what that was about, he admitted, Her crest flickered with patterns that suggested she was choosing her words carefully. Among my people, harmonic alignment, what you experienced as purring, is a deeply intimate act. It occurs naturally when two individuals with compatible resonance patterns encounter each other, particularly in moments of vulnerability or stress. Compatible resonance patterns, Jax echoed, beginning to understand where this was going. Yes, it is. Rare, even between Salin, between different species. It was thought to be impossible. Her faceted eyes met his directly. Until you. I see, Jax said, though he wasn't entirely sure he did. And this harmonic alignment has cultural significance. It does, she confirmed, her crest patterns shifting to something Jax now recognized as the Salin equivalent of a blush. In the most traditional interpretation of our customs, it constitutes a preliminary bonding, what your culture might call a betrothal. Jax blinked, temporarily speechless. We're engaged. The Queen's harmonic laughter filled the chamber. By the most archaic standards, perhaps. But I assure you, I have no intention of holding you to customs you could not possibly have understood at the time. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by a strange, unexpected twinge of disappointment before he could examine that confusing reaction. The Queen continued more seriously. What matters is not the traditional interpretation, but the reality it represents. Our resonance patterns are unusually compatible. This grants us certain advantages in the current crisis, particularly regarding harmonic defenses and communication. It also means that Harrow may perceive you as an even greater threat than he already did. Because I can harmonize with you in ways no other human can, Jax surmised. Precisely. The silence net was likely designed to incapacitate me specifically, clearing the way for whatever Harrow plans next. Having failed twice, he may resort to more direct methods. You think he'll try to abduct you, Jax concluded grimly. It would be consistent with the escalation pattern we've observed, she confirmed. Which is why I have a proposal that you may find unorthodox. Before she could elaborate, an alarm sounded, not the blaring emergency signal Jax had heard during the attacks, but a more subtle, harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate with the crystal walls themselves. Queen Nixara's crest flared with alarm patterns. The palace defense grid has detected an unauthorized entry. We must... The door to the chamber burst open, revealing Captain Arel, his crest flashing with urgent patterns. Your Majesty, we have a breach. Multiple hostiles have penetrated the outer defenses using some kind of harmonic camouflage. They're already inside the palace complex. How many? Jax asked, already moving toward the door. At least a dozen, possibly more, Errol replied tersely. And they're using advanced harmonic weapons, unlike anything we've encountered before. Queen Nixara moved with surprising speed for her tall frame. The secure transport in the lower levels. We must reach it. As they hurried through the crystalline corridors, Jax could feel disturbances in the harmonic field of the palace, discordant patterns that suggested violent conflict. The invaders were engaged with the palace guards, and from the feel of the harmonics, the guards were not faring well. They rounded a corner to find 3 royal guards down, their crests darkened with the unmistakable pattern of severe harmonic disruption. Standing over them were 4 figures in what appeared to be specialized combat suits that somehow distorted their harmonic signatures, making them difficult to perceive clearly. Captain Arel reacted instantly, drawing his own harmonic weapon and firing a focused beam that struck one of the attackers square in the chest. The figure stumbled back but didn't fall, the combat suit apparently providing some protection against standard Salin defenses. The invaders returned fire, forcing Jax, the Queen, and Captain Arel to take cover behind a crystalline column. The harmonic weapons the attackers wielded were unlike anything Jax had seen, emitting not just disruptive frequencies, but actual concentrated pulses of destructive resonance that left smoking craters in the walls where they struck. "We're outgunned," Jax murmured, assessing their situation. "And the longer we stay here, the more reinforcements they'll bring." Captain Arel nodded grimly. "There's a service passage 2 corridors back. It leads to a secondary transport bay." "Go!" Queen Nixara commanded. "I will provide a distraction." Before either of them could protest, she stepped out from behind the column, her tall form radiating authority. The attackers hesitated momentarily, clearly recognizing the Salen monarch. In that brief hesitation, the queen did something Jax had never witnessed before. She emitted a harmonic pulse so powerful that it visibly rippled through the air, striking the attackers with enough force to send them reeling backward. The effort clearly cost her. Her crest dimmed noticeably, and she swayed slightly on her feet. Jax rushed forward to support her, while Captain Arel took advantage of the momentary advantage to fire several more shots at the disoriented attackers. "The service passage," Jax urged, helping the queen toward the corridor Errol had indicated. "Now." They retreated as quickly as possible, Errol providing covering fire as they made their way to the hidden entrance. The passage beyond was narrow and utilitarian, lacking the elegant crystalline architecture of the main palace corridors, but it provided a direct route to their destination. "That harmonic pulse," Jax said as they hurried through the passage. "I've never seen anything like it." "Royal prerogative," Queen Nixara replied, her voice weaker than usual, but still carrying its characteristic harmonic layers. "A defensive capability passed down through my bloodline. Limited in application, unfortunately, and taxing to employ." "Save your strength," Jax advised, noticing how her crest patterns had dimmed. "We'll need every advantage once we reach the transport." The secondary transport bay was smaller than the main hangar, containing only 2 vehicles, sleek, crystalline craft that appeared to be grown rather than built, like most Salen technology. Captain Errol moved immediately to the nearest one, placing his palm against its surface to activate it. "This one is fully charged and ready," he reported. "Where shall I set the destination, Your Majesty?" Queen Nixara hesitated, her faceted eyes meeting Jax's for a moment. "The Echo Sanctuary in the northern mountains. It's isolated, defensible, and contains communication equipment that cannot be easily traced." As Errol prepared the transport, Jax helped the queen aboard. The interior was surprisingly spacious, with seating surfaces that adjusted automatically to accommodate different physiologies. "Will your people be safe?" Jax asked quietly. "If Harrow's forces control the palace." "Captain Arel has already implemented the emergency protocols," she assured him. "The civilian population will be evacuated to secure locations, and the Royal Guard has contingency plans for situations far worse than this." Before they could continue, the transport bay door exploded inward in a shower of crystalline fragments. Through the smoke and debris, Jax could make out several figures in the same combat suits they had encountered earlier. "Go!" Captain Errol shouted, sealing the transport and rushing to the controls. The vehicle hummed to life, its crystalline structure vibrating with increasing intensity as it prepared to launch. Through the translucent hull, Jax could see the attackers firing at them, their harmonic weapons leaving scorch marks on the outer surface of the transport. With a surge of power, the vehicle lifted off, accelerating toward the open hatch at the far end of the bay. They were almost clear when a more powerful blast struck the transport's propulsion array, sending it into a sickening spiral. "Controls are compromised," Captain Errol reported, fighting with the interface. "We're losing altitude." Jax could feel the harmonic disruption spreading through the vehicle systems, a cascading failure that would soon leave them completely helpless. Acting on instinct, he moved to the damaged section of the hull and placed his hands directly against the crystalline surface. Drawing on his unique sensitivity, he reached out to the harmonic patterns of the transport, feeling for the discordant frequencies introduced by the weapon impact. It was similar to what he had done with the silence net, but on a smaller, more precise scale. Gradually, he managed to isolate the disruption and begin counteracting it, not repairing the damage, but creating a compensating resonance that allowed the remaining systems to function more effectively. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," Errol called from the controls. "I've got partial response now." The transport stabilized somewhat, though it was clear they wouldn't be making it to their original destination. Instead, Captain Errol guided the damaged vehicle toward a forested area at the outskirts of Harmonia Spires. "We'll have to set down and find alternative transportation," he said grimly. As they descended toward the tree line, Jax noticed something alarming on the sensor displays, a much larger vessel moving into position above them. "Requiem," he realized aloud. "They're tracking us." The transport shuddered as it struck the upper branches of the crystal trees, which bent but didn't break under the impact. Captain Arell managed to bring them to a relatively gentle landing in a small clearing, but it was immediately clear that the vehicle would not be taking off again. "We need to move quickly," Jax urged, as they exited the damaged transport. "That ship has the capability to deploy ground forces within minutes." Captain Arell led them deeper into the forest, away from the crash site. The crystal trees of the Salen wilderness were unlike anything on Earth, towering structures that seemed to grow from the same living crystal as the architecture of Harmonia Spires, but in organic, unpredictable patterns. They emitted a subtle harmonic resonance that created an ever-changing symphony in the forest around them. Under different circumstances, Jax would have found it hauntingly beautiful. Now, he was primarily concerned with whether it would provide enough cover to hide them from Requiem's advanced scanning systems. They had been moving for perhaps 10 minutes when Captain Arell suddenly raised his hand for them to stop. His crest flickered with alarm patterns as he scanned their surroundings. "We're surrounded," he said quietly. "At least 8 hostiles, using some kind of harmonic camouflage that blends with the forest resonance." Jax extended his own senses, and after a moment, he could feel at 2 subtle disruptions in the natural harmonic patterns of the crystal trees, indicating the presence of beings that didn't belong. Before any of them could react further, a new sound cut through the forest, a powerful, focused harmonic beam that struck Captain Arell directly in the chest. He crumpled instantly, his crest going dark. "Arell," Queen Nixara exclaimed, moving toward the fallen captain. "Stay back, Your Majesty," Jax warned, positioning himself protectively in front of her. From the surrounding forest emerged several figures in the now familiar combat suits, their weapons trained on Jax and the Queen. And behind them, walking with the confidence of someone who knows they've won, came a tall, distinguished human with silver-streaked hair and the bearing of a military commander, Admiral Marcus Harrow. "Jax Calder," Harrow said, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone Jax remembered from years ago. "Still inserting yourself into situations beyond your understanding. I see. And you're still hiding behind proxies and deniable operations," Jax retorted, his mind racing for some way out of their predicament. Harrow's thin lips curved in what might generously be called a smile. "Operational security, a concept you never fully appreciated." His gaze shifted to Queen Nixara. "Your Majesty, I apologize for the unorthodox nature of our meeting. Circumstances have made subtlety impractical." "Admiral Harrow," she acknowledged, her harmonic voice steady despite the danger. "You have attacked my person, invaded my palace, and injured my guard captain. These are acts of war." "No," Harrow corrected smoothly. "These are acts of necessity, regrettable but unavoidable steps toward a more balanced relationship between our species." He gestured to his armed escorts. "Now, I must insist that you both accompany me to the Requiem. We have matters of grave importance to discuss." Jax exchanged a quick glance with the Queen, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. They had no choice for now, surrounded and outgunned. With Captain Errol incapacitated, resistance would only get them killed. "If he's dead," Jax began, nodding toward Errol. "He's merely unconscious," Harrow assured him. "Despite what you may believe, Jax, I'm not a monster, just a realist in a universe that demands difficult choices." As they were escorted through the crystal forest toward a waiting shuttle, Jax felt a strange sense of inevitability. His path had been leading to this confrontation with Harrow since the moment his career had been destroyed. The only difference was that now, the stakes were far higher than his personal vindication. The fate of two species might well depend on what happened next. The Requiem lived up to its ominous name, a massive vessel that combined human engineering with what appeared to be adapted Salen harmonic technology. Its interior was a strange hybrid of utilitarian military design and the more organic aesthetic of Salen architecture, creating an environment that felt fundamentally wrong to Jax's heightened harmonic sensitivity. They were led to what Harrow referred to as the diplomatic suite, though its reinforced doors and surveillance systems made it clear that it was a high-security detention area dressed up with minimal comforts. Queen Nixara appeared outwardly calm, but Jax could feel the subtle shift in her harmonic signature that indicated stress and concern. "You will be treated with all appropriate respect, Your Majesty," Harrow assured her as his security personnel sealed the suite's entrance. "This is a negotiation, not an abduction. Negotiations typically begin with invitations, not armed assaults," she replied coolly. Harrow inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the point without conceding it. "Conventional diplomatic channels were compromised. We had intelligence suggesting elements within your government were actively working to undermine any balanced agreement between our species, as opposed to elements in yours orchestrating attacks on foreign heads of state," Jax interjected. Harrow's attention shifted to him, his expression hardening. "You're here as a courtesy, Jax. Your unique connection to Queen Nixara makes your presence potentially valuable. But don't mistake that for diplomatic standing." "What do you want?" Admiral Queen Nixara asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. Simply put, a renegotiation of the terms being discussed at the conference," Harrow replied. "The current framework perpetuates human technological dependence on Salen harmonic science. It maintains your species' effective control of interstellar travel and communication. This is not a partnership of equals, but a thinly disguised patronage. That characterization ignores the extensive technological exchange programs already in place," she countered. "Human innovation has transformed Salen society in numerous fields, from agriculture to medical science. Permitted innovations," Harrow emphasized, "carefully controlled to ensure they don't threaten Salen dominance in key strategic areas." Jax watched the exchange with growing unease. Harrow's arguments weren't entirely without merit. There were indeed restrictions on certain types of technology transfer, but his methods and the extremity of his position suggested something beyond legitimate diplomatic concerns. "What specifically are you proposing?" the Queen asked. Harrow pressed a control on his wrist device, activating a holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a complex technical schematic that Jax recognized immediately, a full harmonic drive system. The technology that made faster-than-light travel possible. "Unrestricted access to harmonic drive technology," Harrow stated. "Not the limited capability versions currently licensed to human manufacturers, but the complete, unredacted specifications, including the resonance frequency algorithms your government has classified as state secrets." Queen Nixara's crest darkened with what Jax now recognized as grave concern. "Those restrictions exist for valid security reasons, Admiral. The algorithms you're referring to could, in the wrong hands, be weaponized on a planetary scale. A convenient justification for maintaining your technological advantage," Harrow countered smoothly. "But We both know that humans have demonstrated responsible use of advanced technology for centuries. Some have, she acknowledged. Others have consistently found ways to repurpose peaceful technologies for warfare. Her faceted eyes fixed on him intently. Including, it seems, former Earth military officers with access to experimental research. Harrow's expression didn't change, but Jax noticed a subtle tightening around his eyes. I'm offering a path to true partnership, Your Majesty. One where both our species stand as genuine equals. And if I decline this generous offer, then I will be forced to demonstrate the consequences of continued inequality, Harrow replied, his tone remaining conversational despite the implicit threat. Beginning with a live broadcast to both our worlds of your formal abdication, citing irreconcilable differences with Earth, and recommending your cousin Thalak as your successor. Jax felt a cold shock run through him. Thalak, the counselor who opposed the Queen's policies. Counselor Thalak understands the importance of a more balanced relationship between our species, Harrow confirmed. He has been most helpful in providing insights into Salen governance structures. A traitor, Queen Nixara said quietly, her harmonic voice carrying undertones of genuine pain. Working with you to undermine his own people's security. A visionary, Harrow corrected, who recognizes that artificial restrictions on technological exchange ultimately harm both our species. The pieces were finally falling into place in Jax's mind. That's how you got the harmonic weapons technology. Thalak provided access to Salen classified research. Among other resources, Harrow acknowledged. The Echo Tower records, for instance, proved invaluable in developing the silence net. Queen Nixara's crest flared with patterns of shock and outrage. Thalak granted you access to the Echo Tower. That's unthinkable. The security protocols alone would require royal authorization or the cooperation of someone with the appropriate genetic markers. Harrow finished for her. Thalak is a distant cousin of yours. Is he not distant enough to be overlooked, close enough to retain certain privileges? Jax watched the Queen carefully, concerned about how she was processing this betrayal. Her crest had dimmed significantly, and her normally perfect posture had subtly slumped. I need time to consider your proposal, she said finally, her harmonic voice subdued. Of course, Harrow agreed magnanimously. You'll have 12 hours to draft a formal abdication statement. After that, we proceed regardless of your cooperation. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Jax, I'd advise against attempting any heroics. The Requiem's harmonic security systems are specifically calibrated to detect and neutralize unauthorized resonance manipulation, even with your unique abilities. With that parting warning, Harrow exited, leaving them alone in the luxurious prison. As soon as the door sealed behind him, Jax moved to the Queen's side. Are you all right? No, she admitted, her normally melodic voice flat. I am not. Thalak's betrayal is personal as well as political. We were raised together. I trusted him implicitly. I'm sorry, Jax said simply, understanding all too well how betrayal by a trusted figure felt. After a moment of silence, Queen Nixara straightened, her crest brightening with renewed determination. We cannot allow Harrow to succeed. The harmonic drive algorithms he wants access to are restricted for good reason. In the wrong hands, they could be modified to create weapons capable of destabilizing planetary cores. You think that's his actual goal? Jax asked, surprised. Planet-killer weapons? Perhaps not consciously, she replied. But the line between advanced propulsion technology and devastating weapons is thinner than most realize. The same principles that allow us to safely traverse interstellar space could, with relatively minor modifications, be used to tear a world apart from within. Jax ran a hand through his hair, processing the implications. So even if Harrow genuinely believes he's fighting for human equality, he could inadvertently be setting the stage for catastrophic new weapons development. Precisely. She moved to examine the room more carefully, her slender fingers tracing the crystalline elements incorporated into the otherwise human design. These harmonic components, they're sophisticated, far beyond what humans should be capable of producing independently. Helios Combine, Jax surmised. They've clearly had access to Salen technology for longer than anyone realized. The Queen nodded slowly. And potentially to the choir as well, if our theories are correct. Jax began his own systematic examination of their prison, looking for weaknesses or opportunities. The room was impressively secure. No obvious ventilation ducts large enough to crawl through. No maintenance access panels. No convenient exposed wiring. Just smooth walls, comfortable furniture, and subtle but omnipresent surveillance. Harrow wasn't exaggerating about the security systems, Jax noted, feeling the harmonic barriers that surrounded them. There are multiple layers of resonance-dampening fields specifically designed to prevent Salen harmonic manipulation. Yes, but they're calibrated for Salen physiology, Queen Nixara pointed out. Your abilities, while similar in effect, operate on different principles. Jax considered this. You think I might be able to work around them? Perhaps, she said, her crest patterns shifting to what he now recognized as thoughtful concentration. But it would be difficult and potentially dangerous. The feedback from attempting to breach such barriers could cause significant neural damage. Better than the alternative, Jax replied grimly. If Harrow gets what he wants, countless lives could be at risk. The Queen moved closer to him, lowering her voice though they were almost certainly being monitored. There is another option. Remember what I began to discuss before we were interrupted by the palace attack. My unorthodox proposal. Jax nodded, curious about what she had been about to suggest. Our harmonic compatibility is unusual, she continued. Under specific conditions, it might allow us to establish a form of resonance communication that would bypass conventional detection methods. What kind of specific conditions? Jax asked cautiously. Her crest flickered with patterns he hadn't seen before, something between embarrassment and determination. A deepening of the harmonic alignment you experienced during the Purring incident. A more complete synchronization of our resonance patterns. Understanding dawned on Jax. You're talking about some kind of mental link. Not precisely mental, she clarified. It's more physiological. A harmonic integration that would allow us to sense each other's resonant states and, potentially, to combine our abilities in ways neither of us could achieve alone. And this would help us escape because a fully synchronized harmonic pair generates a unique resonance signature that these security systems would not be calibrated to detect, she explained. It's an extremely rare phenomenon, particularly between different species, and thus unlikely to have been factored into their defensive algorithms. Jax considered the proposal carefully. Is it dangerous? Not physically, she assured him. But it does involve a level of intimacy that some find uncomfortable. Our neural patterns would temporarily align in ways that might feel invasive to those unaccustomed to harmonic integration. Like a mind meld in those old science fiction shows, Jax asked, trying to understand the concept in human terms. Less direct than that, she replied, her harmonic voice carrying subtle undertones of amusement. You wouldn't suddenly know all my thoughts or memories, but you would experience my emotional states, my physical sensations, and most significantly, my harmonic perception of the world. It was a strange proposal, certainly, but given their limited options, Jax saw little alternative. All right, he agreed. How do we do this? We need to establish physical contact, she explained, sitting on one of the room's comfortable seating platforms and gesturing for him to join her. Similar to the position when you first experienced my purring, but more deliberate. Somewhat awkwardly, Jax sat beside her. She guided him to lie back, then positioned herself close beside him, one of her slender hands resting lightly on his chest. "Now," she continued, her voice dropping to a softer harmonic register, "I need you to focus on your breathing. Feel the rhythm of it, the natural resonance of your body. I will attempt to synchronize my own patterns with yours." Jax closed his eyes and concentrated on his breathing, trying to become aware of the subtle harmonics within his own body, the rhythm of his heartbeat, the flow of his blood, the electrical impulses of his nervous system. It was strange, yet somehow familiar, like becoming conscious of processes that had always been there but never noticed. Gradually, he became aware of another set of harmonics overlapping with his own, the Queen's biological rhythms, initially distinct and foreign, but slowly adjusting to match his patterns. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced before, not invasive, as she had warned it might feel, but expansive, as if his awareness was extending beyond the normal boundaries of his body. "That's good," Queen Nixara murmured, her harmonic voice seeming to resonate directly with his nervous system. "Now, try to reach out with your harmonic sense. Feel the security barriers around us, but don't push against them yet. Just observe." Following her guidance, Jax extended his perception beyond their immediate space. The harmonic security systems were now far more apparent to him, complex. Layered fields of resonance designed to contain and neutralize specific frequency patterns. With his enhanced awareness, he could see the genius in their design, but also the fundamental assumption upon which they were based, that harmonic abilities functioned in predictable, species-specific ways. "I see them," he whispered. "They're impressive, but limited. They're looking for Salen harmonic signatures or human technology emissions. Not whatever we are right now." "Exactly," she confirmed, her crest glowing with patterns of approval that he could somehow perceive even with his eyes closed. "Now, very carefully, extend your awareness toward the door mechanism. Don't try to affect it yet, just feel its operational frequency." Jax focused his attention as directed, sensing the subtle harmonics of the locking system. It was a hybrid mechanism, partly conventional electronic security, partly harmonic recognition technology. Complex, but not impenetrable if approached correctly. "I've got it," he said, "but I'm not sure how to interact with it without triggering the alarms." "Together," Queen Nixara instructed, her hand pressing more firmly against his chest. "Think of it as a duet rather than a solo performance. I will provide the harmonic structure. You will direct it." As she spoke, Jax felt a surge of energy flowing from her into him, not electrical or physical in any conventional sense, but pure harmonic potential. It was like being handed an instrument he'd never played before, but somehow knowing exactly which notes to strike. With careful precision, he directed this shared energy toward the door mechanism, not attacking it directly, but rather gently persuading it to resonate in a pattern it would recognize as authorized access. The technique required extreme finesse. Too much force would trigger the security systems. Too little would have no effect at all. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, with a subtle click, the door unlocked. Queen Nixara withdrew her hand, breaking the deepest level of their connection, though Jax could still feel a lingering resonance between them. "Impressive," she said, her crest patterns indicating genuine admiration. "Few humans could have managed that level of harmonic control on their first attempt." "I had a good teacher," Jax replied, sitting up and trying to reorient himself. The experience had left him feeling strangely energized, yet disoriented, as if part of him was still operating on the Queen's harmonic frequency. "We must move quickly," she said, rising gracefully to her feet. "The security systems will detect the unauthorized door operation within minutes." Jax followed her to the now unlocked door. "Even if we get out of this room, we're still on a heavily armed military vessel in orbit. Do you have a plan for that part?" A partial one, she admitted. Requiem was originally an Earth military vessel before being transferred to Helios Combine. It should have standard emergency protocols, including escape pods, which will be closely monitored, Jax pointed out. Yes, she agreed. But there's something else on this vessel that Harrow may not be monitoring as carefully. You heard him mention a live broadcast of my abdication. That means communication equipment capable of transmitting to both Earth and Salin simultaneously. Understanding dawned on Jax. If we can access that system, we can send a warning about what's really happening, she finished. Not just to my government, but to Earth's legitimate authorities as well. Harrow may have significant influence, but I doubt he's acting with full governmental authorization. He's not, Jax confirmed. What he's doing would constitute treason under Earth law. With cautious determination, they eased the door open and peered into the corridor beyond. It was empty for the moment, though Jax could hear distant footsteps and voices. "Which way?" he whispered. Queen Nixara closed her eyes briefly, her crest pulsing with concentration. "The strongest communication harmonics are coming from that direction," she said, pointing to their right. "Likely the bridge or a dedicated broadcast center." They moved as quietly as possible down the corridor, Jax constantly scanning for security personnel or surveillance devices. The hybrid nature of the ship worked in their favor. The human designers hadn't fully accounted for Salin perceptual abilities, while the Salin elements weren't optimized to detect a human moving stealthily. They had made it perhaps halfway to their destination when alarm klaxons suddenly blared throughout the ship. Their absence had been discovered. "Time for subtlety is over," Jax said grimly. "We need to run." They sprinted down the corridor, the Queen's long legs easily keeping pace with Jax despite her formal attire. At an intersection, they encountered two security personnel who reacted with momentary surprise before reaching for their weapons. Jax didn't give them time to draw. Using techniques from his military training, he disabled both guards with quick, efficient strikes, not seriously injuring them, but ensuring they wouldn't follow immediately. "This way," Queen Nixara urged, leading them down a side passage. "The harmonic signatures are stronger." They burst through a set of double doors into what was clearly a sophisticated communication center. Banks of equipment lined the walls, some recognizably human in design, others incorporating the crystalline technology of Salin harmonic science. Two technicians looked up in shock as they entered. Before they could react, Queen Nixara emitted a focused harmonic pulse, not the powerful defensive blast she had used in the palace, but a more precise frequency that caused both humans to slump unconscious in their chairs. "That won't harm them," she assured Jax, seeing his concerned expression. "Just a temporary neural disruption." "How long do we have?" Jax asked, moving to secure the door, while the Queen examined the communication equipment. 3 minutes at most before security responds to the alarm, she estimated. And perhaps 2 minutes more before they override the door locks. Jax joined her at the main console, recognizing enough of the human interface elements to understand its basic function. "It looks like it's set up for a planned broadcast, probably Harrow's staged abdication announcement." "Perfect," Queen Nixara said, her slender fingers moving across the controls with surprising familiarity. "That means the channels to both worlds are already established. We just need to activate them ahead of schedule." As she worked, Jax kept watch on the door and surrounding area, tensing at every sound from the corridor outside. "What exactly are you planning to say?" he asked. "The truth," she replied simply. "About Harrow's actions. About Helios Combine's manipulation of both our governments. And about the choir. It may not be believed immediately, but it will create enough doubt to delay any hasty political decisions." The console emitted a soft chime, indicating readiness. "It's active," she announced, broadcasting now to both Earth and Salin central communication hubs. She straightened before the recording sensors, her regal bearing returning in full force despite their desperate circumstances. People of Earth and the Salen Empire, I am Queen Nixara. I speak to you not from my palace, but from aboard the vessel Requiem, where I am being held against my will by forces led by Earth Admiral Marcus Harrow and supported by elements within my own government, including Counselor Thelak. Her voice carried perfect clarity and conviction as she continued. These conspirators have orchestrated attacks on the Harmony Conference with the goal of derailing peaceful cooperation between our peoples. Behind them stands Helios Combine, a corporation that profits from conflict and division between our species. Jax heard commotion in the corridor outside security forces, responding to the alarm, and likely now discovering their unauthorized broadcast. Most disturbing of all, Queen Nixara continued urgently, is evidence of an entity known as the Choir, a living computational network created through the forced, harmonic integration of sensitive individuals from multiple species. This abomination represents the worst kind of exploitation and must be investigated by legitimate authorities from both our worlds. The door shuddered as something heavy impacted it from the outside security, trying to force entry. I call upon the legitimate governments of Earth and the Salen Empire to reject the false narrative being crafted by these conspirators. Our future lies in genuine partnership, not in the exploitation of fear and... The door burst open, and armed security personnel flooded into the room. Queen Nixara maintained her dignified posture, even as weapons were trained on her. "Turn it off," ordered a familiar voice from the doorway. Admiral Harrow entered, his expression cold with fury. "Though I suspect the damage is already done." "Some of it," the Queen acknowledged calmly. "Enough to ensure your plans will face significant scrutiny." Harrow signaled to his security team. "Take them back to the detention area. Triple the guards and implement full harmonic dampening protocols." He fixed Jax with a look of grudging respect. "I underestimated you, Calder. That won't happen again." As they were escorted back to their luxurious prison, Jax felt a strange mixture of triumph and apprehension. They had managed to alert both worlds to the conspiracy, but they remained captives aboard a heavily armed vessel, controlled by increasingly desperate conspirators. What Harrow might do next was anyone's guess. But one thing was certain: the stakes had just been raised considerably. The atmosphere aboard the Requiem had shifted dramatically following their broadcast. The security personnel who escorted them back to the detention suite were tense and alert, and the harmonic dampening fields had indeed been strengthened to levels that made Jax's head ache just being near them. Inside their prison, now guarded by 4 armed security officers rather than the previous 2, Jax and Queen Nixara found themselves in a dangerous waiting game. Their message had been sent, but what impact it would have and how quickly remained unknown. "He'll accelerate his timetable now," Jax said quietly, mindful of the surveillance. "Whatever Harrow was planning to do with your abdication, he'll have to move faster before authorities respond to your broadcast." "Yes," the Queen agreed, her crest pattern subdued under the intense harmonic suppression fields. "Which makes him more dangerous, but also more prone to error." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Harrow, accompanied by a Salen, whom Jax recognized as Counselor Thelak. The counselor's crest patterns radiated a complex mixture of emotions: triumph, nervousness, and something like regret when his faceted eyes fell on Queen Nixara. "Cousin," he acknowledged stiffly, "your unauthorized broadcast was unfortunate. It has created unnecessary confusion at a critical diplomatic juncture." "Is that what we're calling treason now, Thelak?" she replied, her harmonic voice carrying tones of genuine pain despite her composed exterior. "A diplomatic juncture?" Thelak's crest flickered with patterns Jax interpreted as defensive anger. "You speak of treason, you who would chain our people to outdated restrictions, who would keep us locked in ceremonial governance while real power shifts to the parliamentary factions. I am preserving our heritage, not destroying it. By collaborating with those who attacked your queen and killed your countrymen," she countered. There is no justification that sanctifies those actions. Thelak. Admiral Harrow stepped forward, clearly impatient with the family drama. Fascinating as this royal dispute is, we have more pressing matters to address. Your broadcast has indeed complicated our plans, Your Majesty, but not derailed them. He activated a holographic display, showing news feeds from both Earth and Ceylon. The coverage was fragmented and confused, with commentators debating the authenticity of the Queen's message, and politicians from both worlds issuing cautious statements, calling for investigation while urging citizens to remain calm. As you can see, your allegations have created a temporary disruption, but without concrete evidence, they remain just that, allegations from what many will perceive as a compromised source. Harrow's thin smile held no warmth. Meanwhile, we proceed with our contingency plan. Which is, Jax asked, studying the Admiral carefully. A demonstration, Harrow replied simply, of what happens when harmonic technology is misused. The Requiem is currently positioning itself above an uninhabited moon in the Ceylon system. In approximately 1 hour, we will deploy a modified harmonic drive pulse that will destabilize the moon's core, eventually causing it to fragment. Queen Nixara's crest flared with alarm patterns, so intense they were visible even through the dampening field. You cannot be serious. Such an action would prove conclusively that the technology your government has been withholding is, indeed, weaponizable. Harrow finished for her. It will demonstrate to both our peoples the consequences of allowing harmonic science to remain controlled by a single species. It will spark a war, Jax said flatly. Once you cross that line, there's no going back. Perhaps, Harrow acknowledged, or perhaps it will finally force genuine negotiation from a position of mutual respect, rather than Ceylon condescension. Counselor Thelak looked distinctly uncomfortable with this aspect of the plan. Admiral, we agreed the demonstration would be limited, controllable. If the entire moon is destroyed, the impact will be more persuasive. Harrow cut him off smoothly. You wanted leverage in the succession crisis. Counselor, this will provide it. When your cousin abdicates, which she will, to prevent further demonstrations, you will be positioned as the voice of reason, who can negotiate peace with the humans who possess this technology. Jax watched the interaction with growing understanding. Thelak had been manipulated as surely as he himself had been years ago. The counselor had likely believed he was entering a limited partnership to gain political advantage, only to find himself complicit in something far darker. You're being used, Counselor, Jax said directly to Thelak. Once this starts, Harrow and whoever backs him won't stop with one demonstration. This technology, in the hands of Helios Combine, becomes a galactic blackmail tool. Thelak's crest patterns shifted uncertainly. Admiral Harrow has assured me that control of the technology will be shared between our governments, with appropriate safeguards. And you believed him? Queen Nixara asked, incredulously. Thelak, look at what has already happened. Palace attacks, attempted assassination, abduction of your queen. These are not the actions of someone interested in balanced diplomacy. Doubt clearly flickered across Thelak's crest. But before he could respond, Harrow's communication device chimed. The Admiral checked it and frowned slightly. It seems we have a complication, he said, more to himself than the others. Excuse me. With that, he exited, leaving Thelak behind with the guards. Once Harrow had gone, Queen Nixara addressed her cousin directly, her harmonic voice dropping to a register that Jax recognized as deeply personal. Thelak, whatever political differences lie between us, you know this is wrong. Using harmonic technology as a weapon of mass destruction violates everything our people stand for. Our people were warriors once, Thelak countered, though with less conviction than before. Before the Harmony Accords, before we became obsessed with ceremony and consensus. Yes, And millions died in those wars, she reminded him. Is that the heritage you wish to preserve? The indiscriminate destruction our ancestors finally had the wisdom to reject? Thalak's crest patterns were increasingly chaotic, suggesting internal conflict. The human presents a compelling point, he admitted reluctantly. Harrow's actions have been more extreme than initially proposed. Jax decided to press the advantage. Counselor, you've been fed a narrative about Earth's grievances that supports Harrow's agenda, not reality. Most humans don't view Salen as oppressors. We see you as advanced allies who've helped us develop technologies we might have taken centuries to discover independently. Yet there are restrictions, Thalak pointed out. Technologies your people are denied. Some, yes, Jax acknowledged. Just as there are human technologies not fully shared with Salen. That's normal in any alliance. Certain capabilities remain sovereign. But the appropriate response is continued negotiation, not hostage-taking and planet-killing weapons. Queen Nixara's faceted eyes fixed on her cousin with an intensity that transcended the dampening fields surrounding them. Thalak, you know what the choir is. You accessed the Echo Tower records. How can you align yourself with those who would exploit sensitive minds as computational resources? That struck a nerve. Thalak's crest darkened with what Jax interpreted as shame. I was told that aspect of Helios operations was being phased out, that it was a regrettable necessity of early harmonic research that would no longer be required once full technology transfer was achieved. And you believe that, Jax said quietly. Just like I believed Harrow when he told me we were targeting terrorists, not refugees. He's a master manipulator. Counselor, using half-truths to lead people to actions they would never consider if they knew the full picture. A tense silence fell over the room as Thalak visibly struggled with his conscience. Finally, his crest settled into a pattern that suggested resignation mixed with resolve. What would you have me do? He asked, his harmonic voice barely above a whisper. Even if I wish to stop this now, the Requiem is under Harrow's command, not mine. Help us escape, Queen Nixara said simply. Get us off this ship before the demonstration begins. If we can reach either Earth or Salen authorities with direct evidence of Harrow's plans, there's still time to prevent catastrophe. Thalak hesitated, then activated his personal communication device. Security team, you are temporarily relieved. I require private discussion with the prisoners regarding succession protocols. When the guards looked uncertain, he added sharply. By order of the acting regent, as recognized by Admiral Harrow himself. The guards exchanged glances, but complied, exiting the room and leaving Thalak alone with Jax and the Queen. I cannot deactivate the harmonic dampening fields without triggering alarms, Thalak said, once they were alone. But I can get you to a shuttle. The rest will be up to you. Why the change of heart? Jax asked, still wary of a potential trap. Thalak's crest flickered with complex patterns that suggested deep emotional conflict. Because Queen Nixara is right about one thing. The choir is an abomination against everything our people believe about harmonic resonance. If Harrow lied about phasing it out, he likely lied about everything else as well. He turned to the Queen. I sought political advantage, cousin, not genocide. I cannot support what Harrow intends to do with this technology. Queen Nixara studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you, Thalak. And when this is over, that will count in your favor. Moving with urgent purpose. Thalak led them through a series of service corridors designed for maintenance access, rather than regular crew movement. The harmonic dampening effects were less intense here, though still present enough to limit the Queen's natural abilities. The shuttle bay is 2 levels down, Thalak explained, as they descended through a narrow accessway. At this hour, it should be minimally staffed, if questioned. I will claim to be transferring you to a more secure location under Harrow's orders. And when Harrow discovers we're gone, Jax asked. By then, it will be too late for him to stop you, Thalak replied grimly, though likely not too late for him to punish me. They had nearly reached the shuttle bay when alarms began blaring throughout the ship, not the security breach alarms from earlier, but a different pattern that Jax didn't recognize. What is it? He asked urgently. Thalak's crest flared with patterns of alarm. Battle stations alert. The ship is preparing for possible engagement. He activated a nearby information terminal. Vessels approaching multiple Salen defense cruisers, and Earth Alliance military ships as well. They received my broadcast and responded more quickly than Harrow anticipated. Queen Nixara realized both governments must have dispatched their nearest available forces. Which means Harrow will likely accelerate the demonstration, Jax concluded grimly. We need to stop him before he can deploy that weapon. Thalak looked torn between his newfound resolve to help them and fear of what was to come. The weapon control systems are on the bridge. You'll never reach them through conventional means. Not with the ship at battle stations. Then we'll use unconventional means, Jax said, an idea forming. Counselor, does this ship have maintenance access to the primary harmonic drive system? Yes, Thalak confirmed, but it's heavily secured, and under these circumstances. Can you get us there? Jax interrupted urgently. Thalak hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but the harmonic radiation in that area is intense. Unshielded exposure would be harmful to both of you, particularly to a human. We'll risk it, Jax decided. It's our best chance to prevent the weapon deployment. Queen Nixara touched his arm lightly. What are you planning, Jax? The weapon Harrow intends to use is essentially a modified harmonic drive pulse. Correct. At Thalak's nod, Jax continued. Then it draws power from the same systems as the ship's propulsion. If we can create a significant enough disruption in the harmonic drive itself, you'd prevent the weapon from firing. The Queen finished, understanding. But you'd also likely disable the entire ship. Better adrift than actively hostile, Jax pointed out. Thalak led them through increasingly restricted areas of the ship, using his counselor's authorization to bypass security checkpoints. The few crew members they encountered seemed too focused on battle preparations to question why prisoners were being escorted through sensitive areas. As they descended into the ship's engineering sections, Jax could feel the growing intensity of harmonic energy, a deep, thrumming resonance that seemed to vibrate through every molecule of his body. Even with his heightened sensitivity, it was uncomfortable. For Queen Nixara, whose natural harmonic perception was far more acute, it was clearly painful, despite her stoic expression. They finally reached a heavily shielded doorway, marked with warning symbols in both human and Salen script. Thalak placed his palm against the security scanner, which hesitated longer than previous checkpoints before finally acknowledging his authority and unlocking. The harmonic drive core, he explained, as the massive door slid open. Normally, this would be staffed by at least 6 engineers, but with battle preparations underway, they've been called to more critical stations. Inside was a vast chamber, dominated by a pulsing crystalline structure, unlike anything Jax had seen before, neither purely Salen nor human in design, but something new and terrifying in its power. The harmonic energy it emitted was almost visible, creating shimmering distortions in the air around it. That's not standard Salen technology, Queen Nixara said, her voice tight with pain from the intense harmonic radiation. It's been modified extensively. Helios Combine's work, Thalak confirmed, his own crest patterns showing discomfort. Based on Salen principles but incorporating elements I don't recognize. Jax approached the drive core carefully, extending his harmonic sense despite the discomfort it caused. The resonance patterns were incredibly complex layers upon layers of interacting frequencies, all carefully balanced to channel enormous energy for propulsion. And embedded within those patterns, He could detect the weapon system. Harrow had described a modified subroutine designed to focus and project that energy in a destructive pulse. "I can feel the weapon configuration," he told the others. "It's integrated directly into the drive controls. Disabling it without affecting the entire system would be impossible." "Then disable the entire system," Queen Nixara suggested. Moving to his side, despite the obvious pain, the proximity to the core caused her. "Between your harmonic abilities and my knowledge of Salen drive technology, we might be able to induce a controlled shutdown." Thalak looked alarmed. "A shutdown of this magnitude would trigger multiple failsafes and alerts. Harrow would know immediately." "He's going to know something's wrong soon enough anyway," Jax pointed out. "Our absence can't go unnoticed much longer." As if in response to his words, a new alarm began to sound different from the battle station's alert, more urgent and localized. "Security alert in the detention area," Thalak translated, his crest flickering with fear. "They've discovered you're missing. We have minutes at most before they begin a ship-wide search." "Then we do this now," Jax decided. He turned to Queen Nixara. "Like before, in the detention suite, a harmonic synchronization." She nodded, though her crest patterns reflected concern. "The intensity here will make it far more dangerous, especially for you. The feedback could cause permanent neural damage." "Better than the alternative," Jax replied grimly. They positioned themselves on either side of a control interface connected to the drive core. Unlike their previous synchronization, which had been relatively gentle and controlled, this would need to be immediate and powerful, a harmonic assault on the drive systems, rather than a subtle manipulation. "Thalak, watch the entrance," Queen Nixara instructed. "Warn us if anyone approaches." As Thalak moved to the doorway, Jax and the Queen established physical contact, their hands meeting above the control interface. The effect was immediate and intense, the harmonic connection between them flaring to life with far greater power than before, amplified by the massive energies of the drive core surrounding them. Jax gasped at the sensation, which was like being suddenly thrust into a raging storm of sound and feeling. The Queen's consciousness merged partially with his own, creating a shared perception that was overwhelming in its complexity. "Focus," her voice came both audibly and through their connection. "Find the primary resonance pattern of the drive core. Feel how it flows." Struggling to orient himself within the maelstrom of harmonic energy, Jax gradually began to perceive the underlying structure, the fundamental frequency that governed the entire system. It was beautiful in its complexity, a masterpiece of harmonic engineering. And within that beauty, he found the weapon configuration an elegant but deadly modification to the natural flow, designed to focus and project the drive energy in a devastating pulse. "There," he communicated through their connection. "That's the target." Together, they began to manipulate the harmonic fields surrounding the control interface. It wasn't a matter of pressing buttons or issuing commands. The system was designed to respond directly to harmonic input from authorized operators. What they were attempting was essentially a form of harmonic hacking, introducing carefully calibrated discordance into the otherwise perfect symphony of the drive system. The effort was excruciating. Jax could feel blood beginning to trickle from his nose and ears as the intense harmonic radiation taxed his human physiology beyond its limits. Beside him, Queen Nixara's crest had dimmed to an alarming degree, suggesting she too was nearing her limits. But gradually, the drive core's brilliant pulsing began to falter, its rhythm becoming erratic. "It's working," Thalak called from the doorway. "But security teams are converging on this section. We have perhaps 2 minutes." Jax pushed harder, channeling everything he had into their shared effort. Through their connection, he could feel the Queen doing the same, drawing on reserves of strength he hadn't known she possessed. The drive core's pulsing continued to destabilize, but they needed more, a complete shutdown. Not just a temporary disruption. In desperation, Jax reached deeper into their harmonic connection, seeking a level of synchronization they hadn't yet attempted. Together, he urged through their link. Complete alignment. Understanding his intent, Queen Nixara opened her consciousness fully to him, and he to her. The separation between them blurred further, creating a single harmonic entity, with capabilities neither possessed individually. With this newfound unity, they struck at the heart of the drive system, not with force, but with perfect, focused dissonance. It was like introducing a single, precisely calibrated false note into a complex symphony, causing the entire performance to collapse. The effect was spectacular and immediate. The drive core's pulsing stuttered, flared briefly, to an almost blinding intensity, then went completely dark. Throughout the ship, power fluctuated as backup systems struggled to compensate for the sudden loss of the main drive. The harmonic connection between Jax and the Queen broke as both collapsed from the effort, physically and mentally exhausted. Thalak rushed to their side, his crest patterns showing genuine concern. "Are you injured?" he asked urgently. "Nothing permanent," Queen Nixara assured him, though her normally melodious voice was strained. "The weapon disabled along with the drive system," Jax confirmed, wiping blood from his nose with the back of his hand. "They won't be destroying any moons today." Alarms were blaring throughout the ship now, and the distant sound of running footsteps suggested security forces were closing in on their position. "We need to move," Thalak urged, helping the Queen to her feet while Jax struggled upright on his own. "The shuttle bay is our only chance now." They had just reached the corridor outside when Admiral Harrow appeared at the far end, flanked by armed security personnel. His expression was cold fury incarnate. "I should have expected this from you, Calder," he said, his voice carrying easily despite the alarms and confusion. "Always the humanitarian, regardless of the larger strategic picture." "There's nothing humanitarian about mass destruction, Admiral," Jax replied, positioning himself protectively in front of Queen Nixara. "Or about exploiting sensitive minds as computational resources." Harrow's eyes narrowed at the reference to the choir. "So, you've pieced that together as well. Impressive, though ultimately irrelevant. The choir represents the future of harmonic technology, the perfect synthesis of biological sensitivity and computational precision." "It represents slavery," Queen Nixara countered, her harmonic voice regaining some of its strength. "The subjugation of consciousness for technological advancement." "A limited perspective," Harrow dismissed. "But then, those at the pinnacle of power rarely appreciate the necessity of sacrifice." He gestured to his security team. "Take them. And Counselor Thalak as well, since he's chosen to betray our arrangement." As the armed personnel advanced, the ship suddenly shuddered violently, throwing everyone off balance. Emergency lighting activated as main power fluctuated again. "Sir," one of the security officers reported urgently, "we're being boarded. Multiple points of entry. Seylan Royal Guards and Earth Alliance Special Forces." Harrow's expression flickered with momentary surprise before hardening into resolve. "Engage all defensive systems. Buy us time to restore enough power for a short FTL jump." "That won't be possible, sir," the officer replied, checking a data terminal. "The harmonic drive is completely offline. Engineering reports catastrophic resonance disruption. Restoration time estimated at minimum 12 hours. For the first time, Jax saw genuine fear cross Harrow's features, the realization that his carefully orchestrated plans were collapsing around him. "It's over, Admiral," Jax said quietly. "Both Earth and Seylan forces are here. Whatever story you plan to tell about the Queen's abdication won't stand up to direct investigation." Harrow's hand moved to a weapon at his belt. "Perhaps, but I can still ensure you don't live to testify against me. Calder, you've been a thorn in my side for far too long." Before he could draw the weapon, Another violent shudder ran through the ship, this time accompanied by the unmistakable sound of breaching charges detonating nearby. The distraction was all they needed. With surprising speed for his age, Jax charged forward, tackling Harrow before the Admiral could recover his balance. They went down in a tangle of limbs, Jax focusing on restraining Harrow's gun hand. The security team moved to intervene, but suddenly found themselves facing Queen Nixara, who had recovered enough of her strength to emit a focused harmonic pulse that sent them staggering backward, disoriented. Thelak, showing unexpected courage, seized a weapon from one of the stunned security officers and used it to keep the others at bay. "Reinforcements are coming," he called to Jax. "Hold him just a little longer." Harrow fought with the desperation of a man who knew he had nothing left to lose, landing several painful blows to Jax's already battered body. But Jax had something Harrow didn't: a lifetime of field experience, rather than administrative command, and the iron determination of someone fighting for justice long denied. Gradually, Jax gained the upper hand, forcing Harrow's weapon arm to the floor and pinning him with his full weight. "It's done, Marcus," he said, using the Admiral's first name deliberately. "The truth about the refugee massacre, about the choir, about all of it's going to come out now." Harrow's face contorted with a mixture of rage and something like despair. "You fool! You have no idea what forces you're interfering with. The choir is far more than you imagine, and Helios is merely one arm of a much larger organism." Before Jax could press for clarification, the corridor filled with armed forces, a mixture of Salen Royal Guards and Earth Alliance special operatives. The latter, led by a familiar face, Mara Cade. "Looks like you started the party without us," she remarked, surveying the scene with professional detachment. "Good work, though. Admiral Marcus Harrow, you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit war crimes, and about a dozen other charges that the lawyers are still compiling." As Earth operatives took Harrow into custody, Mara approached Jax and Queen Nixara. "Your broadcast worked better than you could have hoped. Both governments responded immediately. Turns out, neither was particularly pleased to learn about unauthorized military operations targeting allied heads of state." Queen Nixara's crest flickered with patterns, suggesting relief tinged with concern. "And the choir was that aspect taken seriously as well?" "That part is complicated," Mara admitted. "There's definitely interest in investigating, but solid evidence is still lacking, which is why we'll need detailed testimony from all of you once this immediate situation is secured." Jax nodded, feeling the accumulated exhaustion and injuries of the past days catching up with him now that the immediate danger had passed. "What about Helios Combine?" "Their stock is in free fall," Mara reported with satisfaction. "Both governments have frozen their assets pending investigation, and their board of directors is scrambling to distance themselves from Harrow's operation. Whether that's genuine ignorance or strategic damage control remains to be seen." As the combined forces secured the Requiem and began processing prisoners, Jax found himself standing beside Queen Nixara on an observation deck, watching as Salen and Earth vessels maintained a protective perimeter around the disabled ship. "So," he said after a comfortable silence, "what happens now?" Her faceted eyes turned to him, her crest patterns suggesting thoughtful consideration. "Politically, a great deal of diplomatic cleanup, investigations, trials, and eventually, a more carefully negotiated alliance between our peoples." "And personally?" Jax asked, surprising himself with his directness. The Queen's crest flickered with patterns he now recognized as her version of a smile. "That depends partly on you," Jax called her. "Our harmonic compatibility is unprecedented. It would be scientifically irresponsible not to study it further." "Scientifically irresponsible," Jax repeated with a small smile of his own. "Is that the only reason?" "No," she admitted, her harmonic voice taking on softer, more personal tones. Though perhaps we should discuss the other reasons when we're not both suffering from harmonic radiation exposure and exhaustion. Fair point, he conceded. But there's something else we need to address first. Harrow's parting comment about the choir being more than we imagine. About Helios being one arm of a larger organism. I don't think this conspiracy is fully unraveled yet. Queen Nyxara's expression grew serious again. No, I fear you're right. What we've accomplished here is significant, but it may be merely the first step in a longer journey. A journey that might lead us to wherever the choir is being held, Jax suggested, and to whoever is ultimately responsible for its creation and exploitation. Would you be willing to continue that journey? She asked. You've already risked more than could reasonably be asked of anyone. Jax thought about it, genuinely considering what it would mean to pursue this further, rather than returning to the quiet anonymity of his former life. The harmonic abilities he had tried so hard to suppress had proven crucial in averting disaster, and the connection he had formed with Queen Nyxara was unlike anything he had experienced before. Moreover, the thought of sensitive minds, possibly including children, being exploited as living computational components, was something he couldn't simply walk away from. Not when he had the unique abilities that might help free them. Yes, he decided finally. I'm in. Whatever it takes to dismantle the choir and bring those responsible to justice. Her crest brightened with approval. Then we have much work ahead of us. But first, rest and recovery. She gestured to the magnificent view of space, visible through the observation window. And perhaps, when we're both feeling stronger, another attempt at harmonic synchronization under less desperate circumstances. Looking out at the stars, with a Sailing Queen beside him and the promise of both justice and discovery ahead, Jax felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose, of rightness. What had begun with the strange intimacy of an alien queen purring on his chest had evolved into something far more significant, a partnership that might change the course of interstellar relations, and possibly save countless lives. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together in harmony. 2 weeks after the events aboard the Requiem, a modest ceremony took place on one of the floating gardens that adorned the upper levels of Harmonia Spires. Unlike the grand formal affairs, typical of Sailing royal functions, this gathering was small and relatively simple, just a few key figures who had been involved in thwarting Harrow's conspiracy. Jax stood somewhat awkwardly in clothing that had been specially designed for the occasion, a hybrid of human formal wear and Sailing ceremonial attire that symbolized the bridge between their cultures. Beside him, Queen Nyxara was resplendent in her royal regalia, her crest glowing with patterns of solemn joy. Captain Arel, fully recovered from his injuries during the palace attack, stood at attention nearby, his crest patterns indicating proud satisfaction. Tessic bustled about, 6 limbs constantly in motion as he made last-minute adjustments to the harmonic resonators that would record the ceremony for posterity. Mara Cade observed everything with the sharp eyes of a journalist, though she had agreed that this particular event would remain private. Even Councillor Thalak was present, though under guard. His cooperation following his change of heart had earned him some leniency, though he would still face consequences for his role in the conspiracy. "Are you ready?" Queen Nyxara asked softly, her harmonic voice carrying to Jax alone. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied with a smile that belied his nervousness. "Though I'm still not entirely clear on what this ceremony entails." "It is simple," she explained. "We exchange resonance crystals. These are calibrated to our individual harmonic signatures, and will serve as both symbolic tokens and practical tools for our work ahead." The crystals in question were small, elegant formations that seemed to pulse with inner light, one vibrating with the complex harmonics of Sailing royalty, the other with the unique frequency pattern that was distinctly Jax's own. And the cultural significance, he pressed, knowing there must be more to it. Her crest flickered with patterns of amusement. Officially, it establishes you as permanent harmony advisor to the Salen Crown, with all the diplomatic privileges and responsibilities that entails. She paused, her faceted eyes meeting his directly. Unofficially, in traditional Salen culture, the exchange of personal resonance crystals is somewhat analogous to what humans might call an engagement. Jax's eyebrows rose. So we are getting engaged after all. In the most ancient interpretation, perhaps, she acknowledged with another flicker of amusement. Though I assure you that the diplomatic corps of both our worlds have been careful to frame this in strictly professional terms in all official communications. And unofficially, he asked, genuinely curious about where this unusual relationship might lead. Unofficially, Jax Calder, she replied, her harmonic voice taking on warm, intimate tones. We are acknowledging a connection that transcends conventional definitions. Whether that evolves into something humans would recognize as romantic, or remains a unique harmonic partnership, unlike anything either of our species has experienced before, that is for us to discover together. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. They exchanged the resonance crystals before the small gathering, each accepting not just a symbolic token, but a profound responsibility to work together to uncover the full extent of the choir conspiracy, to bridge the gap between their peoples, and to forge a new kind of understanding based on their unique harmonic compatibility. As the final resonance tones of the ceremony faded, Captain Errol approached and offered a formal bow to both of them. The lullaby is prepared, Your Majesty. Advisor Calder. All systems are optimal, and the crew awaits your arrival. The lullaby was a sleek, state-of-the-art research vessel that had been specially modified for their upcoming mission. Equipped with advanced harmonic detection systems designed by Tessic, it represented the best of both human and Salen technology working in concert. Thank you, Captain, Queen Nixara acknowledged. We shall depart as scheduled. As the gathering dispersed, Mara Cade approached Jax with a knowing smile. Permanent Harmony Advisor. Quite a promotion from Logistics Coordinator. Life takes unexpected turns, Jax replied with a shrug. Speaking of which, I never did get the full story on how you got involved in all this. Mara's expression grew more serious. I've been investigating Helios Combine for years, following financial irregularities, unexplained disappearances of harmonic-sensitive individuals, particularly children. When I saw you suddenly elevated to the Queen's advisor, with your background in harmonic research, it seemed like an opportunity to finally get close to the story. And now I've got the biggest story of my career, she said with satisfaction. Though the part about the choir is still being handled carefully, too much public detail could endanger those still trapped in the system. Jax nodded in understanding. The investigation into the choir was proceeding with deliberate caution, balanced between the need to dismantle the exploitative system and the risk of causing harm to the sensitive minds integrated into it. Will you keep us updated on the Earth side of the investigation? He asked. Of course, she promised. And you'll share whatever you find out there. She gestured toward the stars, visible even in the daylight sky from their elevated position. As much as security allows. Jax agreed. The trail Harrow left leads to several outer colonies where Helios had research facilities. If we're going to find the choir and those controlling it, that's where we need to start. Later, aboard the Lullaby as final launch preparations were underway, Jax found a quiet moment alone with Queen Nixara on the ship's observation deck. The view of Harmonia Spires from orbit was breathtaking, the crystal city gleaming like a massive musical notation against the blue-green landscape of the Salen homeworld. Having second thoughts, the Queen asked, noticing his contemplative mood. Not about the mission, Jax assured her. Just marveling at how much has changed in such a short time. A month ago, I was unpacking equipment crates, trying to stay invisible, And then you woke with an alien queen purring on your chest, she finished for him, her crest patterns indicating gentle humor. Not how I expected my day to start, he admitted with a smile. Definitely not how I expected my life to change. The harmonic resonance of the universe works in unpredictable patterns, she said, the philosophical observation carrying the weight of Salen wisdom. Sometimes discord leads to greater harmony in the end. Captain Arel's voice came over the ship's communication system, informing them that final launch clearance had been granted, and they were ready to depart. As the Lullaby broke orbit and set course for the outer colonies, Jax felt the resonance crystal he now wore against his chest, a constant, subtle harmony that connected him to Queen Nyxara and to a future full of both purpose and promise. Whatever lay ahead, the fight to dismantle the choir, the effort to bring its creators to justice, the ongoing work of building genuine understanding between their species, they would face it together. Their unique, harmonic bond, giving them strength and insights no one else could provide. And somewhere in the depths of space, beyond the reach of conventional detection, sensitive minds cried out in silent, harmonic anguish. Children and adults of multiple species, their consciousness forced into computational slavery. They had no way of knowing that help was finally coming, that their plaintive song had been heard and understood by the most unlikely of harmonic pairs. But soon they would know. Soon they would be free. The lullaby accelerated to harmonic drive, leaving a shimmering resonance trail in its wake as it carried its passengers toward a rendezvous with both justice and destiny. The first chapter of an extraordinary partnership had closed, but the greater story of harmony, liberation, and unprecedented connection between different worlds was just beginning. And it had all started with an alien queen purring on a human's chest.